We're going to call this special meeting to order. It is August 5th, 2021. It is 5:02 p.m. Can we have a roll call, please, Ms. Wester?
Terrell.
Present.
Beard.
Present.
Kennard.
Here.
Piles.
Present.
Thunderbird.
Here.
Wester present. Martell.
Present. We have a quorum. Thank you. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin, let me apologize first to the candidates as well as the community for my camera or lack thereof, as I'm having technical difficulties. Moving forward, we're going to move into the public comment agenda items only session of the agenda. We have only one and very important agenda item, which is the superintendent interviews. And I want to open the floor up to the community at this point in time. As always, your comments are limited to, in this case, agenda items only, 3 minutes, no personal attacks, and that's it. So the floor is open. We have 36 participants. If you'd like to address the board, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and the floor is yours. And we will give it a few moments so any individual that wishes to address us will have the opportunity. This is a very important meeting. Okay, I see we did have one comment. I just want to acknowledge from J.M. White, and we appreciate your feedback. So we're going to move forward now into the next portion, which is the superintendent interviews. Before we begin the interview, I just want to welcome all community members and thank you for taking the time to join us in the second round of interviews for Romulus Community's new superintendent. Please know that the audience will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide access to an online forum for those that would like to provide interview feedback. Now we're going to proceed in our second interview for Dr. Benjamin Edmondson. Welcome and thank you for being with us again today. At this time, if we could proceed with your presentation, the board has requested a 100-day entry plan for each candidate into the Romulus Community Schools, and we will move forward at this time with Dr. Edmondson's presentation.
Thank you, President Martell. Thank you to the Board of Education. Thank you for the staff for their committed service. And I want to thank the community for coming on out and for such a special moment for the school district. I'm very excited to be given this opportunity, and I'm ready to go. As soon as you all let me, I'm ready to get this thing going. So if we can start with the presentation, start with page 1. Prospective Romulus Community Schools Superintendent, Benjamin Edmondson. Next slide, please. Sorry for the noise in the background. I can't help that. Somebody's cutting the lawn. I shut the door. I closed all the windows. These are some of the words that have been associated with me from various stakeholders. You can just get a quick look at them. You need to always know what the product is before you buy it. So just want to give you an example of some of the words that have been used when describing me. Moving on. 100-day entry plan, Romulus Community Schools, realigned, reshaped, reimagined. I always believe that, when you have a statement or two or a few words that they're powerful. gets the community excited. It shows newness, new life, new energy. And that's what we're going to bring if you give me this opportunity. Newness, new life, new energy. And we will be realigned, reshaped, and reimagined. Next. First, we need to start with a sample vision statement. You need to know what you want to do, what you're about, so that all decisions that we make refer back to the vision statement in this case. So when we're doing things, we need to always make our decisions based on our vision statement. I created a sample one. The well-being of our school community is our purpose, priority, and passion. Okay, that will be on all of our school buildings. When people walk in, they know what our mission, what our vision statement is. It's on our letterhead. It's everywhere we are. People in the community and the surrounding community know that when you come to Romulus, the well-being of our school community is our purpose, our priority, and our passion. Next. The vision statement right here, I put it visually for everyone to see. We put the students in the center. They are protected by everybody around them. That's like a force field. So it's all of our responsibility. As we see at the bottom, every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists they become the best that they can possibly be. That's by Rita Pearson, an educator. We put Romulus students in the center, and they are protected by the Board of Education, parents, the staff, the business community, taxpayers who have no children in the district, residents, and state government. It's our responsibility. We're going to get all of those stakeholders, all of them, to protect the well-being of our students. That's a powerful visual, in my opinion, and I'm biased. Next. The superintendent is a professionally trained school administrator who must carry out certain obligations prescribed by law as well as imposed by the ethics of the profession. This is also true of principals, teachers, department heads, and staff specialists. These individuals have an obligation to see that sound educational policies are followed for the good of the child. We all need to keep that in mind, not just the superintendent. We're not just holding him accountable, in this case, me, him, but we're also thinking about the other individuals, principals, teachers, department heads, staff specialists. They have an obligation to see that sound educational policies are followed for the good of the child. Next. Indicators of stress that I've seen in my research and of concern. Enrollment declines. There's a trend. You'll see shortly what that looks like. Resident students choicing out, poor student achievement, white flight, low graduation rates, budget cuts, staff attrition, absence of a strategic plan, media bias, I put bad media. I don't like the way that sounds, but dubious media, I guess that would be best. Increased dropout rates, overrepresentation of special ed students. By that, I mean there's an overrepresentation of Black students based on when we look at Wayne County and when we look at the state. And then discipline problems. Now, those are just some concerns. And they're not unique to Romulus. Any urban environment has those same type of stresses. But let's get to the next page. This is exciting. That was back. Gotta go forward. Our students have to deal with new vocabulary terms when they come in, and so does the staff. COVID-19 has happened. Racial inequality, sickness, police brutality, death, social distance, systemic racism, online learning and Zoom, CDC guidelines, Black Lives Matter, a new superintendent, hybrid schooling, protest, PPE. These are all new terms that have just popped up really in the last 6 months. It doesn't mean that they didn't exist before. It's that these are new. These are what our kids and our staff have to deal with. Going in, we have that on top of everything else. Next. Let's change the narrative, shall we? We need a plan. Here's the plan, the correlates of effective schools. We have to establish safe and orderly environments. We have to have vision visionary leadership at our principal level and at our department head levels, and clearly at the superintendent level. We need to monitor student time on task and their opportunities to learn. We need to create ongoing student assessment. We need to have a strong mission statement at every school, because every school has its own DNA. Don't be confused. The mission statement is different from the vision statement. Each school, though, has its own mission. We need positive homeschool relationships, and we need to have high expectations for students and staff. We couple that with the blueprint for systemic reconfiguration. The blueprint is really tough because they want quick changes and a quick turnaround. It's very difficult to get a quick turnaround. So that's part of the problem. And when you have high transients, it's hard to implement and to sustain. But we can look at the problem solving portion, which is a method for district use and to analyze data. Communications, which will be a uniform system throughout the district for us to speak. Talent management, we need to look at how we recruit, hire, assign, evaluate, retain, and remove. And our performance management, which is the overall district's ability to assess whether or not we've installed the blueprint correctly. So we already have the blueprint in Romulus. My job is to figure out where we are with that. And then let's do the correlates of effective schools. Let's focus on that. And all of our concerns, I promise you, will be minimized. We have a plan. Supplemental data is really hard to see here, but what this is over trends from 2015 all the way to 2019. You can see revenue. Revenue is on the decline. When you look at expenditures, expenditures are on the rise relatively. Fund balance, though it says 4 million, I believe it's actually 2 million now, because that was in 2019. I believe in 2020, there's been some changes to that. Pupil FTE, when you look at that, you see that the FTE is going down. We're losing our students. Resident pupils leaving. Look how many pupils that have left. In 2015, it was 1,800. Now we have, my eyes are bad. I'm getting old. 2,300, almost 2,400 students opting out. Non-resident pupils, this is really interesting. 2015, it was 479. We're having less pupils come into the district from outside districts. So something is happening there too. And our financials, our current ratio is, we have to watch our spending. That's just supplemental data produced by the state. Go to my Excel, my school data on the website, on the district website, you can find it. Moving on. Some more data points I'll just show you. Romulus High School, every school has a grade. Romulus High Schools, you can get a look at that. When you see the graduation of an A, that's got a little asterisk by it. It's an A when you look at, it takes 6 years to graduate for some students, and that's 94%. If you're looking at 4 years, 9th through 12th, we graduate at an 82% rate. Another thing to look at is growth. We want to have high growth. And when we look at that growth number, we're getting a D. So when students are coming, they're not learning as much as they should while they're there. And then the proficiency is more about achievement. So we have some work to do at the high school. Next. Romulus Middle School, you see same thing, C and D range. Those students are the ones that end up going to the high school. So we have some work there. Okay. It's nothing to get upset about. It's just we have some work to do. Moving on, let's look at our elementary schools. We have Barth Elementary, B, C. Next. That's pretty good. The B is good. Proficiency, now we need to get some growth up. I can explain that as a leader at another time. Hale Creek, proficiency is a C, growth is a C. We have some work to do. Romulus Elementary School, one of the strongest. It appears to be the strongest elementary school as a B and a B. That's some good news too. And Wick Elementary, we have some work to do. They have proficiency D, growth D. So in terms of equity, you have to look at what schools that you have to hit hardest. And that would be Wick Elementary School that we have to hit hardest. Next, this is interesting. The competitor, Summit Academy. Taking students from the same district or from the same community, they have C's as well. But something's going on. If their proficiency and growth is a C, as well as our schools are C, why are people leaving to go to Summit Academy only to get much of the same? So that's a question that we have to think about, and that really deals with culture and climate, something that we have control over when we implement the correlates of effective schools coupled with the blueprint. Special education demography, if we take a look at African-American students, statewide is about 20% rate. Wayne Risa, which is the Wayne schools in Wayne County, that number jumps up to about 45%. And then you see Romulus Community Schools, 75% of special ed students are African American. So we have some work to do. When you look down, I can't do it now because of time. You get to see that in a greater amount. It is what it is. Nothing to get upset about. It's just work to do. Continuing on. And this is data that's from the district. Now let's talk about the plan. District leadership. I will impact the culture and climate, develop trust, restore confidence, value staff, be present, establish visibility, create identity, and lead with transparency. Things that I have in bold are things that we must do right now. Anything in black is something that over time we can get to. 1, review the phase 4 return to school plan, prepare action steps when COVID hits, because it's gonna hit. Meet with the REA union leadership so that we can talk about how teachers are feeling about going into these classrooms and going into schools. We will devise a visual plan for the return to school plan, provide scenarios for the governor's phase 1 through 3 and phase 5. Right now we're in phase 4. Fortunately, hopefully we get to phase 5, but if we slip into phase 3, we need to explain what that is to the community. Communicate weekly with community regarding return to school, our safety efforts, our PPE, and our procedures. Begin the process of developing a strategic plan with cabinet members. As you see, I've kind of addressed that. I will schedule one-on-one meetings with central office staff and cabinet members. We will present the state of the district, addressing the 7 correlates of effective schools and using similar data. We will meet with the manager of facilities, Bill Garland, weekly, and I will provide the board weekly updates in the community about what's going on in our schools. Invite the state of Michigan superintendent, a colleague of mine, Dr. Michael Rice. I'm going to welcome him to our school district, but that's later on. I will establish a breakfast with union leadership. We'll have a breakfast with custodians and a breakfast with office professionals to hear their concerns. They're just as important as any other staff member, including myself. We're going to meet and we're going to talk. Going to meet with the new director of special education. We're going to review compliance and assure services for students. Parents of special ed students should be concerned about how this new plan is going to implement or how it's going to be implemented and impact their children. Moving on. We'll improve public trust and confidence through open, honest communication and positive relationships. Activities, develop a superintendent's monthly email, a newsletter, a video. I will include absentee ballot recipients, nursing homes, and businesses because they absolutely vote. You have to get them on your side, and you want them to know what's happening in the district in which they pay taxes. I will visit every school weekly. That's something I enjoy doing, talking to teachers, talking to students, and engaging with parents. The best that I can in a COVID, in the COVID-19 era. Meet and greet all transportation workers. You see in black a couple of things that I'd like to do, but we're probably not going to be able to do that at this point. We'll meet with leaders from the biggest employers within our attendance area. We're going to promote the district and develop and strengthen our partnerships. The Amazon Fulfillment Center, the Ford Motor Company, we have Penske and DTW. They will see me and the team. It's not just me. We will have a team, okay? Moving on, we're going to schedule meetings with community leaders, the clergy, community organizations, nursing homes, and assisted living facilities. We're going to try to open up. I would like to have a testing center where parents get tested from the schools. It's currently happening in other districts where parents come to the schools and the schools are giving COVID tests for parents and antibody testing. Next, meet with the Greater Romulus Chamber of Commerce, present the RCS vision. The Chamber of Commerce needs to know what we're doing in our schools. We need to have their support. And I would be remiss, I didn't put we'll meet with realtors, but we have to meet with realtors. We need to give them a packet that anybody that's buying a home in this community gets a packet, a welcoming packet from our district. We've got to be able to compete. Next. Improve instructional leadership and professional development. You can see all the things in the black, but I'm going to go to the bolded white. Review and align district professional development to create a comprehensive and systematic plan aligned to the district strategic plan. When we get our strategic plan, we know what we're trying to do. We have goals that we're trying to implement, and the PD aligns with the goals because the goals are that's what we're trying to get to. We're going to reorganize instructional cabinet, address missing gaps in the personnel. There are missing gaps. Review the blueprint for implementation. What is successful and where are we? I need to know where we are. I need to work with our staff to find out what's going on with the blueprint. How far are we and how long have we been implementing it? And to fidelity. Let's get out of district leadership. I'm going to try to get this done in 5 minutes. Student achievement. Disaggregate achievement data, align outcomes with our strategic plan, DEI and DEIB commitment. We need state standards and growth measures. So I'm going to meet with the cabinet and principals to discuss their data, review trends, disaggregate by school, staff members, subject area, and subject groups, subgroups. We'll create opportunities to meet with teaching staff to hear their concerns, suggestions, and solutions. You have to have some happy teachers. You have to have teachers that if they have concerns, you must be a problem solver, or in this case, I must be the problem solver with others, problem solving and making sure that we have happy teachers. Happy teachers get greater outcomes. Help schools develop and implement programs and strategies for involving parents and the community in helping students achieve. We will evaluate distance learning opportunities, including our E2020 or Edgenuity platform. We're going to review attendance procedures and reporting, examine trends by subgroups. We want to find out if kids are coming to school or what group is missing. Address student growth results by teachers using NWEA results from fall and spring. And we will meet with each principal to review achievement data and areas of concern and ensure, this is critical, ensure compliance on all IEPs and 504 plans. We cannot be behind on IEPs or our 504 plans. They must be regarded with fidelity. They must be implemented with fidelity. Next. And the Board of Education. An urban superintendent's tenure is 1.9 years. Urban superintendent, 1.9. Why is that? Oftentimes because of the stressors of being in the community, but usually it has to do with board and superintendent relationships. So we have to be focused on making certain that that's not the case. Just for everybody else, 2.9 for everybody else, 1.9 for an urban soup. Schedule meeting with Board President Martell and discuss a framework, format, and agenda for our board retreat. We have to have a board retreat. We have to be one board, one voice, and we have to know our jobs and our responsibilities. We'll hire a facilitator like MASB, schedule and conduct a virtual retreat, establish clear understanding of our roles and our responsibilities, our expectations, our communications, and our systems for mutual accountability. We'll establish a regular meeting time with President Martell for reviewing board agenda items. We will schedule an individual meeting with each board member, and we'll meet with school district legal counsel, find out what's going on legally. Ensure effective district governance through positive board superintendent relationships. Schedule monthly one-on-one board meetings, identify concerns and perceptions and issues of contention. Let's move toward resolution as a whole board. We'll work to establish one board voice. Can't have everybody going out there doing their own thing. One board voice. Schedule board governance leadership training through, again, MASB, and establish regular communication systems with the board, such as biweekly information emails. Let's get out of this Board of Education thing and let's get into financial and budget management. Familiarize the community with the district budget, evaluate trends, align with the strategic plan. So our activities are meet with administrators to discuss and establish their budget imperatives. What's important to them? But what's important has to align with the strategic plan. That's why we have to get a strategic plan. That has to be among the greatest priorities. Examine state funding trends with Ms. Rudolph, review the operating costs and individual budgets, get cost analysis for each Romulus building, examine expenditures and revenues, and review all contracts with Ms. Rudolph. Coming to a close, almost. Review all critical documents and organizational charts. I'm going to just roughly run through this. Review funding streams supporting each area of district, establish accountability measures, and determine data to be collected. Next page. Now we're marketing and communications, very critical. Review the Romulus.org website. We need to make it look student-centered and get it nice and lively for everyone. We edit the website to prominently place our vision, mission, and DEIB declaration. Website has to be student-centered. Send correspondence to Chamber of Commerce, absentee voters, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, highlighting students and district accomplishments. You must show people what you're doing well. Revise letterhead to incorporate our vision and mission statement so it's everywhere. Visit neighboring early childhood programs. We have to get early childhood programs to consider coming on board and getting those kids to our school district, and unveil new welcoming signage in all district properties that highlight our vision. The bottom says the best marketers are always creating relationships with customers, brands, and other marketers. And lastly, highlight students and staff who are aligning with our vision and mission implement the Superintendent's Challenge and the Superintendent's Excellence Awards. I'll talk about that another time. Develop student internship programs, utilize parent and student testimonials, and quantify parent involvement in student participation as a benchmark. Children are the priority, change is the reality, and collaboration is the strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Edmondson.
Thank you.
We're going to move forward with just a few questions, starting with number one. With the uncertainty of COVID-19 and the possibility of a resurgence leading to shutting down of schools again, what do you believe is important to prepare students, families, staff, and our community so that all groups are able to experience success in classrooms as well as online teaching and learning environments?
I'm going to try to, it's a long question. I'll try to succinctly do this in 2 minutes or less. The first thing that I think about is I put myself in the place of a parent. What would I want to know? I'd want the district to communicate a plan. You've got to communicate the plan. What's going to happen when we have online or virtual school, or what's going to happen when we have a hybrid? What's that look like? Or what does the traditional method look like? We have to be clear on communicating our plan. That's number one. Secondly, I guess I would want to ensure our special ed parents need to make certain that they feel comfortable knowing that things are changing, and they want to make sure that their kids are getting serviced. So again, all of this is about communicating a plan and making parents feel comfortable about what we're doing. For me, I think it's important to talk to teachers and make sure that I've said this over and over and over, we need to make sure that teachers feel comfortable. If you don't have teachers that are comfortable, nothing is going to happen. Okay, learning is not going to go on. So we need to make sure that teachers are feeling comfortable in this new environment. We need to make certain that we have enough PPE for everyone. I don't think that we could really open schools if we don't have the proper PPE. This all being said goes back to the vision statement about protecting the well-being of our community. So when we're making decisions, all of our decisions about well-being. So sometimes we're not going to get what we want, but everybody knows that we're going to refer back to our strategic plan and our vision statement. I think it's important that as the superintendent that I explain what the governor's phase 1 through 3 schooling looks like. Right now we're in phase 4, but that's part of the education. And if we get to phase 5, that would be wonderful. But explaining that to our parents, what phase 1 through 3 looks like as well. So all of this could be done through Zoom. Lastly, I think it's important that we have school nursing or adequate social worker support. Got to have conversations with the Department of Health. I've got to create a strong community. I'm sorry for the people behind me. But making certain that we have the right personnel. Remember, I talked about gaps. Got to have school nurses now, for sure. We have to have adequate social work support for our staff and students and our Department of Trauma. I know I said lastly, but the lastly thing is making sure that our staff is trauma informed. Students are coming into school with trauma. I'm traumatized. I've lost 2 people in my family to COVID, and I need to make certain that the district is able to address the trauma that's coming in the buildings. So I guess I would say that in a nutshell and just leave it like that. I hope that I was succinct enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. Because education and the external environment are constantly changing, our superintendent should be forward-looking and anticipate for those changes. Please share your approach to monitoring and organizing appropriate responses to changes in these environments and provide an example of when you've done so.
Ooh, man. Okay, I would just say that the first thing is that I've established a general sense within the community. I've established a relationship with the community where they feel comfortable talking to me. I feel comfortable proactively reaching out to the community and telling them about what we're doing. I've done some things in the past where I've met with state reps. Our state representative, Ronnie Peterson, at the time, I've met with him to discuss our school district. I have a good relationship with U.S. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. So from a national or federal level, we have that. I have the relationship. You have to have the relationship. From a state level, it's nice to have state senators and state reps on your side that represent your community who can advocate and help you address some of the changes that are occurring. Being involved in the community on an ongoing basis, getting out there and going to churches and meeting with pastors and meeting with clergy and having conversations. I've done that in the past. I would meet, it wasn't quarterly, it's twice a year. I would meet with the Ministerial Alliance because I said that we work with the same students. I didn't have to have a separation of church and state. When I'm off school grounds, I can talk to our pastors who are serving our kids. Pastors allowed me to come in and talk about what our school district is doing. So I'm always, anytime I get a chance, I'm out there pushing our product. And, as things change, I'm out there. I would say I would do Zoom meetings because things aren't as quite easy, but having Zoom meetings and keeping your community informed. Teachers want to be informed. So I present an opportunity for me to talk to teachers, find out what they're doing, hearing their concerns, and being that chief advocate for them in the community. So I guess I would say those things, and looking for an opportunity to always push our product and always communicate with our community members.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, from your experiences, what strategies or programs have you used to increase academic scores for all students, and what was your specific role in the process?
Okay. I mentioned this earlier today, and I mentioned it last week. We implemented a balanced literacy program, and that was primarily at the elementary and middle school level. And balanced literacy is where kids are reading at their instructional level. So just because you're a sixth grader doesn't mean you're reading books at a sixth grade level. You might be reading a book at a third grade level, but we're working with a sixth grader who's reading at a third grade level. We have books in the classroom. We have leveled libraries where our students can come in there and read on their level. The books don't look any different, so it's not like a sixth grader reading a third grade book looks like something different. So we implemented that when I got to the district because we didn't have a curriculum. So we implemented this balanced literacy program. And then I brought in literacy coaches. So the literacy coaches were people within our district who we had trained in balanced literacy so that these literacy coaches could go into the classrooms and provide professional development for our staff and get our staff comfortable with this balanced literacy program. We worked with Scholastic Reading because Scholastic Reading has balanced literacy libraries. So we work with them in identifying literature of color, really from a person of color perspective, wanted to make sure that our kids had access to that. So we did those things. We assessed data, or my job is I assess data. I looked at the NWEA scores. I looked at our balanced literacy scores to see where kids were reading. That's my responsibility with the assistant superintendent of K-12 instruction. I allowed our literacy coaches to train our entire staff, and we created an opportunity where our literacy coaches and our teachers changed our report card to reflect balanced literacy. So parents aren't getting the ABCs anymore on a grade. They got where their child was reading, or what reading level they had, and they had benchmarks. So they knew this is where a child should be, this is where my child is. So we did that quarterly monitoring. And we've gotten 2 schools off of the failing list because we actually went to the balanced literacy program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, as superintendent, how will you determine when to inform the Board of Education versus engaging us in actual decision-making?
Okay. I would start with, and I mentioned this in my strategic, 100-day plan, the board, we have to have board training. MASB usually provides that. We have to have board training. All of us collectively have to have a board training so that we're all speaking the same language. We all have the same expectations. There are norms. We get to know personalities and what things I do well and where I struggle, quite frankly. Honoring what the board does well, and that training is really important. That it's like onboarding. We have to do some new onboarding because I'm the new person, but I want to onboard with you all with an outside trainer who comes in and helps us figure out how to work as a team. I also want to make certain that we have a retreat where we're doing things together. We need to interact and create some camaraderie and some trust. You know, I'm coming in not knowing anybody, so we need to do that. So I would do weekly board briefs to you all, communicating what's going on instructionally, what's happening at each school. The principal gives me a brief that I turn into you all so that you know what's happening in their school. And you all get the same information. So it's not like I'm giving one board member this information and the other board member this. You're all getting the same information. I'm going to come to you when it's time to implement policies. A lot of things come down from the state that you have to implement, but there are certain things that we might want to implement as a policy in our own district. So that's the responsibility of the board, is to set policy. But I would work with you in creating a team. The team helps you set policy. Team gives you recommendations for policies. And then if you think that we need the policy based on what we've shared with you, then the board creates the policy. We would work on declarations, particularly as an example, Black Lives Matter. Maybe we want to have a declaration about where the district stands on Black Lives Matter, or let's say equity. The board needs to do a declaration on equity, or the board needs to do a declaration on LGBTQ plus. You know, that's when we're doing declarations, then we need to come to the board. The whole purpose to me is that the board and the superintendent must work together and collaboratively. As I said, board relationship is one of the reasons why a superintendent doesn't last long. And I'm looking forward to working with the board and getting trained together and sharing and smiling. It doesn't have to be so oppressive sometimes. Let's laugh. Let's look and see how we've moved our district forward together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, what potential concerns do you have about this position?
I guess the biggest one for me is the unknown due to COVID. I know how to do the job. I can tell you, I've done it at a high level. I've trained for it in going to the urban superintendency. That's a national competitive superintendency training that I got into, and I've done it at the state level. So I understand the job. I'm familiar with the community. I'm familiar with a community that's similar, but I'm familiar with the community because I live in Wayne County and I've lived here for 20 years. So you don't have to tell me about Romulus. I could talk about some of the former principals and some of the people that are there. So I feel comfortable there, but it's the unknown due to COVID. Things are changing rapidly. And do we have the resources when things are changing? Do we have the funding when things are changing? I'm really concerned about the community well-being. I've said that's got to be, we have to be champions for the well-being of our community. And I want to know that we have the resources. I want to know that the board is behind me in making certain that we can hit this COVID. I mean, we need to hit it hard. We need to understand that it's hitting communities of color harder than anyone. So some of the decisions we are making, we need to make those decisions knowing that this is hitting our community harder. So it's the unknown due to COVID, and it's the lack of support at the federal and state level financially.
Thank you. Next, we know you'll need to do more fact finding when you get to the district, and we'll gather input from the staff on past initiatives. But based on your research of Romulus, what is one thing you think you may be able to immediately improve upon with a different perspective? And what is one thing you believe you are excited about because of its success?
Well, I'm going to start backwards. I would say the correlates of effective schools. I keep saying it because it works. I know that it works. And it's just so surprising how many people don't know about it. And that should always be a question. When I interview, I'm going to ask people, have you ever heard of the correlates of effective schools? Because that's research. That's sound, effective research. So there's 7 things that can help change the culture of your district. So I'm very excited because Romulus has not implemented the 7 correlates, and a lot of places have not. But I've done it not only as a superintendent, but I also did it as a principal. But as a superintendent, I trained our staff and our community to understand when you come into a building, I want you to look at these 7 things as a parent. When you're complaining, or if you complain about anything in our schools, how does it match up with those 7 things? Do you see low expectations? You need to tell me that. Or do you see high expectations? Visionary leadership. Do we have principals in the right places that are visionary? So I'm very excited about the implementation of the correlates of effective schools, working with the school board, knowing that, look, we just do these 7 things, we will absolutely see changes. So I'm very excited about that. In fact finding, I'm pretty familiar with the district. I don't know what's going on in terms of, like curriculum. I don't really know that. But when I looked at the state scores that I shared previously, I know that there's work to do. So if we can do balanced literacy, or if we're really looking at our NWEA results, we'll know where our strengths are. We'll know where our areas of improvement need to be. So I'm coming with a blueprint. We come with a blueprint, and it naturally, I have to say coupled with the blueprint, but we come with the blueprint and we look at data. That's part of the district network blueprint, but we come with data and we look at data and we can make our decisions based on the data that we see. So I'm very excited about bringing the correlates, because again, we're going to be the best in town, period. And I'm not saying we're not now, but everybody's going to know that we're the best in town.
Thank you. Next, please give an example of how you have handled resistance to change and/or criticism from stakeholders.
Okay, resistance to change. I'm a change agent, so sometimes people are fearful of change. So I would often come into school districts, and when I talk about change, there's about 8 things that cause people to get nervous about change. So the goal is to let everybody see that it's okay to be nervous about change, and there are reasons why people are nervous about change. So it's somewhat like of an education. So when you look at these reasons why people are scared of change, you can identify why. Is it a lack of resources? Is there no plan? There's several reasons why people have a problem with it. I'm okay because I understand change, but helping people identify where they struggle with these changes is something that's very exciting, because it actually reveals what you're not doing right, why that change did not work. There's usually reasons for it. But my thing has been to show a willingness to adjust. I take input from others. I don't have all the answers. I tell everybody that all the time. I certainly don't have all the answers. Getting people involved in the vision, getting people involved who might be naysayers. When you get them, you're empowering people. So, when you're making changes, you don't make change for the sake of change. You want to show people why the change may in fact work, or why it's needed. So as the superintendent, I'm not coming in here making a bunch of changes. It's getting a group of people together to start looking at our data and determining whether or not we need to make specific changes. But the correlates of effective schools helps us move our district forward no matter what. As an example, we were able to give a car away for 2 years in Ypsilanti schools. I think I shared that with you before. Brand new car. The first year it was done, we gave the car away at graduation. And I had some people that did not like the fact that it was done at graduation. They thought that it took away from graduation. So I got a bunch of people together, teachers and staff members and parents together, to discuss what we could do next year. And what we did next year was we had it in the gymnasium in front of all of our student body, because we wanted to energize the student body and we wanted to get them excited about giving away a car. I never thought that it would be that controversial, that change. I was just shocked that there were some people that were resistant, because they felt that instead of a car, we need to give people our winner, we need to give them a scholarship. But my thing is, you got to know your community. A car goes a long way in a community like Ypsilanti Community Schools. So showing a willingness to adjust.
Thank you. Next, what measures can you take to be as diligent as possible in keeping staff and students safe and healthy while in our buildings?
Sorry. That goes back to the governor's plan, making sure that we follow the governor's plan, and then having our own plan, just being familiar with the governor's phase 1 through 3, phase 4, phase 5. The important thing to me is making sure that we have the PPE, and we're considering, everyone's wellness. I think that's critical. The well-being, I said wellness, the well-being of our staff and students is critical. Ensuring that we have enough PPE is critical. I think that we need to collaborate with unions, that I would collaborate with union leadership to see how they're feeling. These are uncertain times. I mean, I have my feeling on certain things. I want to make sure that parents feel that they've had a voice and that their voices are heard and that they understand why the decisions that we've made were made. I want to provide access to parents and staff to address their concerns. People should have access to the superintendent and not have to, write a dissertation to be able to get in his or her ear. There should be an opportunity where they can contact you freely, or that we create some kind of venue where they can let their voices be heard, or perhaps in a Zoom. Every week you Zoom with elementary staff and then middle school staff and high school staff and find out how they're feeling. These are very uncertain times, so I get it. This is about ensuring that people have the right resources and that people have the right comfort. And I look forward to having that conversation because every day something new pops up, and we have to figure out how to address it proactively, and as much as possible, we need to do it before the opening of school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next. Excuse me. It's been a few years since you've been a school administrator. What will be the most challenging aspect of returning to the superintendency?
Thank you, President Martell, for recognizing that. I've been out for 2 years. But I've been, I still have great relationships with superintendents. I attended the state conferences, so I really stay connected. But I guess the biggest thing for me is that in this job, everybody expects you to have all the answers. And particularly with COVID, the community is looking at you, your staff is looking at you, everybody is looking at you to make the right decision. That's really frightening to me because, we're talking about lives. We're talking about livelihood too, lives in terms of those that work for us, work with us. We're talking about student lives. We're talking about students that go home to parents, but we're also talking about, when I said liveliness, we're talking about jobs. So I'm concerned if we go to all virtual, we have a community that may not be able to sustain being at home financially. And then we have to couple that with teachers that may not feel comfortable sending their kids, or parents not comfortable sending their kids. And all of that falls on the superintendent, and people feel like they can freely take jabs at you. They can put you out there on the internet and embarrass you and question your leadership. That's the biggest concern. But again, if we're talking about well-being and we're a cohesive board and we've given our community ample opportunity to get involved with our plan, then I feel a lot better. But still, you're the guy that has in this case, I would be the person that has the bullseye on me. And I would say this, I like to have the bullseye because I feel that I'm equipped to be able to handle that. And I also feel that I do things outside of the superintendency in terms of my personal life. I fish and I hunt, I do some other things to give me the balance that I need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next. The world of public education is constantly changing and evolving, with ideas coming out all the time to address core standards. When looking at a new approach, initiative, or curriculum, how much time should be given to be able to measure its success in implementation or results?
Wow, that's a tough question there. It's a complex question. I think there's some factors in that. Can you read the last part?
Sure.
Looking at what?
So let me repeat the whole question. The world of public education is constantly changing and evolving, with new ideas coming out all the time to address core standards. When looking at a new approach, initiative, or curriculum, how much time should be given to be able to measure its success in implementation or results?
I would say at least 2 years. First of all, it needs to be implemented with fidelity. Before you push it out, you have to make sure that you have the right professional development plan for staff to be able to implement it properly. So I would say 2 to 3 years. Seems like a long time, but it's not. The first year you have to make certain that you're your teaching staff is prepared. So that's year one. Then year two is, implementing it to fidelity. And then year three, you'll start seeing some of the results if done properly. I think I can live with that answer. It's very complex, but I can live with 2 to 3 years. The first year is about implementing it properly. Figure out, move on because of time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Next, please give us an example of a time that you had to make a decision based solely on revenues and budget constraints.
Well, I think that might be an easy one. Layoffs, period. I don't think that needs more discussion than that. That's solely based on revenue. It's not based on who you like, what you want to do, but sometimes you have to make some cuts, and it's all about revenue when you're laying off. So I guess I can live with that one.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next, if you are hired to be our next superintendent, what noticeable differences will you make in the Romulus Community Schools?
My presence. I have a strong presence. I walk into classrooms. I try to empower teachers as much as I can. I also hold them accountable, but accountability starts with me. Before I ever expect you to do something, the accountability starts with me. But being accessible is important. Being visible, visiting barbershops, going to churches, walking into classrooms, spending time with your staff, giving staff an opportunity to grow under your leadership, giving them an opportunity to grow personally and professionally the way that they want to. I have a presence. When I walk into a room, I would say I definitely have a presence, and I feel comfortable with who I am. I like to collaborate, because when you collaborate, people feel empowered. When they feel empowered, they'll do anything for you and the mission. So I think that would be it. That my presence and my expertise and knowledge. First, I said presence, and I added expertise and knowledge just because I felt that's how I needed to end it.
Thank you. And I know you've spoken about the blueprint some, but please tell us about your experience with the blueprint framework and how you see it being used in Romulus in the future.
Okay, my first year when I got the job, my first week, I was at the Blueprint Network in Lansing. We took a team. I was there for 3 years, and I would say that we did not successfully implement it because the pace is so rapid. And if you can't get the right professional development, if you can't find the time for your staff to implement it, then it doesn't happen. Staff is already inundated with things, and then we throw more on it. The blueprint is so complex. But what we were able to do is 2 things. We were able to do the communication driver. So we're all speaking the same way. When something was important, there's a little RR that you put on it that you want a response from somebody, or NRR that no response required. So we implemented the communication piece to perfection. But yet some people still didn't use it. I think you struggle when new people come to the district if you haven't planned for training. But I think it's in practice, it's excellent. But as I told Dr. Chandler, who was the one that devised it, I said that the time frame is too aggressive, particularly for urban schools. We have so many things thrown at us that trying to implement the blueprint is tough. When people leave your district, they take the blueprint with them too, if it hasn't been implemented correctly. So we weren't able to implement that correctly under my leadership. We also did the talent management. So we did work toward getting the talent management, but we weren't able to do it's called district network. So the district network part is about installation. And I knew that we didn't install it right. The blueprint has to reside with the superintendent. In this case, I think that I failed in one respect, but I did have my cabinet work on it, and we had our staff work on it, but it just was not enough. I think there are great components. As I said, it couples well with the correlates of effective schools in terms of the communication driver, talent management driver, and there's a problem solving piece. And problem solving is done through your data. So it takes some time. And again, when you ask me about implementing, I say 2 to 3 years. The blueprint says they can get it done in 1.5 years. I think that's very tough. 2 to 3 years we should be able to implement the major aspects of the blueprint.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
this last question is a two-part question. What is your approach to furthering the development of a highly effective leadership team, and how do you evaluate the success of your approach?
Well, I would say the approach is the combination of hiring outside the district for newness, for new ideas, for new leadership, but also recognizing the strengths and talents of those in the district who are doing marvelous things. You create opportunities for them to be promoted. You have to have the balance. When people feel that you're bringing a ton of people from the outside, it doesn't create a cohesive team. When you demonstrate that you're doing only internally, there's struggles of favoritism. You hear that there's such and such is cool with Dr. E, or cool with this assistant superintendent, or cool with the board. So you have to couple both of those, outside and inside, get together, and you create opportunities for collaboration. You have to be intentional, as my 100-day plan said, where you're meeting with your cabinet and you're building leadership, where you're meeting twice a month regularly to move the district forward, to empower those leaders to go out and implement what we said we were going to do and what we're charged to do, which is the strategic plan.
President
Thank
Martell, I do have a question from an audience member, if you'd like me to pose it to Dr. Edmondson.
Please.
Dr. Edmondson, would you be open to other ways of teaching reading besides balanced literacy? There are more successful approaches with a more systematic and explicit plan to teach reading.
Yes, I would. It's about collaboration. So the thing is, if we get together and we can prove that it is an effective program and that we can go visit places. So I've done the visiting with the balanced literacy, but if we have a strong team, a reading team that we assemble, hey, bring it. I mean, we need new ideas. We need fresh ideas, new ideas, and we need to go visit places and make sure that we can implement it with fidelity. All I did was mention balanced literacy. It's not something that's based on the question that was asked, but I'm absolutely open to other ideas because it's been some time since I've been in elementary as well. So if we can get some good leadership at the elementary level, I want to empower teachers to be able to speak freely and come up with ideas to move the district forward. I love that that question, that person was very conscientious of some other things being around, and what you need is sustained leadership. If you don't have sustained leadership, you implement a program and the next soup comes in and it's gone. So we got to work on sustaining it as well. So yes, I'm absolutely open to it. Whoever that is, let me know who you are. If the board selects me and you give positive feedback, then it's possible.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, Mr. President.
Please.
Okay. Dr. Edmondson, you mentioned in your first interview that you are a consultant. How is that going to work with your being a superintendent?
My first love is I'm not doing the consultant, the gig. I needed to make an income. I needed to have employment. And that's the only reason that I started doing the consultant job, because I didn't have an income. It's not my first love at all. My first love is being a superintendent. I have no interest. I do have to do the Arne Duncan. I made the commitment to do the Arne Duncan piece, but that's not a worry. My commitment is to the district because that's what excites me. That's what I was missing. You miss when you're in, it's like a teacher deciding to leave and go be a consultant. It's not the same. You miss the kids, you miss the energy. So consultant work is nothing that anybody has to worry about. I'm not interested. And I say that truthfully. I want to do the Arne Duncan piece because I think that would also help our district as well. But then that's it. I don't have any desire. Quote that. I want that quoted. I don't have any desire to do that work. But I do have a partner that does do that.
Thank you. So President Martell, now would be an opportunity to open up the floor to any of the board members if they have any follow-up questions they would like to ask of Dr. Edmondson based on the questions that he's answered today.
Board,
Mr. President.
Please.
Yes, Mr. President, this is Ms. Kennard.
Hi,
Ms. Kennard, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Edmondson, in your presentation, you mentioned the indicators around the community school of stress, and there were some things that was in concern that you were concerned about. And so this is pertaining to the budget one. And so my question to you is, how will you approach the anticipated budget cuts without compromising necessarily programs and services for special needs under our resource students? For our resource students, yes.
Oh, thank you. First of all, this is an equity question. So it's not about equally. So you don't cut equally. This is about equity. Special ed students are high needs. So you protect as much as possible. You protect the needs of those that are depending on you most. So the job is to look for other cuts that stay away from particularly our special ed and most vulnerable students. When we talked about well-being, we have to follow the law, first of all. I suspect that in years to come, or this year, that there's going to be some changes in special education funding and things like that. But at this point, you stay away from cutting anything in the special education area. They are your most vulnerable students. You find other ways, other places where you can make favorable cuts or cuts that are going to impact your least vulnerable the least.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. President.
Please, Ms. Fowles, the floor is yours.
Yes, as we talk about budget cuts, because we are in uncertain times and funding is being reduced and threatened to have further cuts, how do you see us having to obviously run a district based on a budget and having to make practical cuts without making cuts to something that's crucial for our being a sustainable district? So how do you balance cuts versus keeping things so that we go forward when the mindset is to cut?
Well, you can't cut your way out of things. It doesn't work. That's proven. What I would do is, you said, how would I? It's not an I thing. That's not I. That's we. We have to determine, once we have our strategic plan, this is a we thing. Teachers have great input. They have a lot to say about that. They're the ones that experience the cuts when you make them. So this refers to what I said earlier, when you create an environment where you have collaboration. So even with budget, there's a process for budget where you involve a committee to create a budget that then goes to your central administration, or your central administration is part of that team. They create this budget based on the district strategic plan and your priorities. They take that back to the superintendent's cabinet. The superintendent's cabinet reads it, looks at it, and makes some adjustments, gives it to the director of finance, who looks at it and says, hey, do we have the money? But first of all, the district finance person is part of the committee. Then that goes to the subcommittee, the board subcommittee, to look at and determine, hey, are we following a strategic plan on these cuts? Okay, and get the support of the board finance committee. When we get the support of the board finance committee, they send it back to the superintendent and his cabinet for further to look at it further, or maybe they have some suggestions or some questions that we have to address, and then we get it back to the board for final adoption. So there's no I in this. This is we. So I just wanted to say that when you say, hey, what would you, it's not me. This is, when we have the systems in place that are right, they work. Let them work. And that goes also to the question about concerns. There have been plenty of times, if I can share it, it's related, how I make decisions. When we try to hire, I'm in it at the beginning. Then I leave. So if we have a position that's open, I'm in it in the beginning. I'm part of the interviews. We choose 3 people as a committee. And then if we're all satisfied with those 3, I pass it on to the next committee to make the decision. I don't need to make the decision because I'm comfortable with those 3. And I always tell teaching staff, this is not an I thing. Don't blame the superintendent. When we bring somebody in, it's we brought them in. So when we lose them, we lost them, not me. This is we. So that's a hard concept for people to understand because they're used to the superintendent making all the decisions. That's not me. And you can quote that one too, Ms. Piles.
Thank you very much.
Yes. When appropriate, you can quote that. There will be some times where, a superintendent has to make depending on the nature and, the time constraints.
Are there any additional from the board?
Mr. Martell, this is Ms. Wester.
Please, the floor is yours.
All right, Dr. Edmondson, you talked about the high school and the proficiency and growth being at a D.
Yeah.
What would be your immediate plan to remedy that?
One of the things that I did, and I think was successful, that I would do again is, as the superintendent, my office was in the high school on Mondays and Fridays only. And I was there to help, not intimidate anybody. I was there to help to create the culture and climate that we wanted. I was just another person. I'm not there to evaluate the principal. I'm there to help set the tone. So your presence as a superintendent, just being there in itself, you're going in classrooms, you're talking to kids during lunch. You're asking them, who are the best teachers here? Okay, what makes that teacher good? You get to go into classrooms and see the classroom environment. Then I'm actually assessing what's going on. I'm able to assess what is going on. For lack of a better term, I used to say, I inspect what I expect. So I'm going in and I'm just looking and seeing what's going on. I'm asking teachers what they need. A lot of teachers aren't used to a superintendent even caring to ask you that. What do you need? Do you have the right resources? So that's one of the things that I would do. Another thing I would want to do is, the district is missing, I don't think they have a curriculum director. I have some ideas on how to empower people who are already at the high school level, and maybe giving them a stipend to serve as district coordinators in their subject area. And then they work with the assistant superintendent or the executive director of K-8 instruction, because I was thinking K-8 instruction needs its own person. And then at the high school, we have, since it's subject matter in particular, we get people who are experts in social studies or science, and then they help with an additional stipend, helping us create unity and addressing some of our issues. But that's what I would do. I love kids, so I'm going in on Mondays and Fridays or Tuesdays, and that's why kids are like, Dr. E, they know me, and they will know me here because you don't have to fear me. But what I say to kids is, I'm serious business now. I mean, we don't have our clown suit on. It's the wrong school is not the place to have your clown suit on. There is a place for that, but it's not school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. President, may I please?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Red, the floor is yours.
Okay, Dr. Edmondson, you talked about staying in compliance with the IEP, making sure that those compliances are accomplished.
Yes.
Just in a nutshell, what is it that you would do that's different to assure that we are staying in compliance with IEPs?
Mr. Rao, first of all, great question. I can't say that I would do anything different. I have to see the data first. So we may not have to do anything different if the data suggests that we're in compliance. But if the state is contacting us and telling you you're out of compliance, they always tell you why. So sometimes it's about dates, that you didn't get the information in, you didn't complete the IEP in enough time. Sometimes this one is really interesting, where a lot of places already had the IEP done before the parent walks in. The parent is a part of the team. You can't then this is the plan, and the parent comes in and they have to accept it. No. So you get hit with that. So you have to start thinking about why you're out of compliance. And the state provides you answers as to why you're out of compliance. Once you find that out, then you can address it. We may not have the right staff. I saw the number. That was a high number to me of special ed students. Do we have the right staff? There's a number that the staff has per caseload. Is their caseload too high? But also, I'm going to hold staff accountable. You, as a special ed teacher, are accountable for compliance. So if you're not compliant, that's an evaluation issue too. So we need to hold teachers accountable, but we also need to make sure that we have given them everything they need to be in compliance. So if I'm not giving you what you need to be in compliance, then how am I going to hold you accountable for compliance? You need to be holding me accountable for not putting you in a position to succeed as a professional. Great question, though.
Thank you. Board?
Mr. President, I had a question.
Please, the floor is yours.
So I'm going to try to word this right. So you talked a lot about building relationships and meeting with the community, different stakeholders. But how do you balance that out with the work that's needed to be done in central office in the superintendency role? And I'll use an example. Because we don't have a curriculum director right now, there are some gaps in employee skills in that particular setting. And so what would you do as superintendent to assure that those responsibilities are being taken care of?
Thank you. First, one is that you have to know how to delegate. As a superintendent, you do have to know how to delegate, but you have to delegate and put people in the right positions. Meaning, I'm not going to ask somebody who doesn't know mathematics to do mathematics. So you have to know what the strength of your staff are. I would begin by saying to the Board of Education, the curriculum director, executive director, or assistant superintendent of K-12 or K-8, we have to have that position. A superintendent cannot do that work and be superintendent. It's almost impossible to do the instructional piece as well as everything else. That's what burns people out. So you need to make certain that you have people in the right places. So in the event, like you said, if they're not in place immediately, then it's my job to work to get the right people in that place. If we don't have them in the district, then we need to get outside. It's got to be priority. Okay, and that's one of the things that I'd like to do is share with the board what I feel is priority. Working with teachers, finding out what positions, where do we have gaps, and one of the gaps is curriculum. And there might be a reason for why things are looking the way that they look if that position's not there or if that person is overwhelmed. So just looking for ideas. Going into the community is just deciding on one particular half day, per week where you're going to go. I mean, you can manage that. But I think what you said is very important. So it's talking to teachers, talking to staff, finding out where our gaps are, and then making sure that we fill them. And we can look at our budget. You can look at federal monies to fill some of your gaps, meaning Title I, Title II. Title II is for something else. But Title I, Title III, you can kind of use some of those things to fill some of the gaps. And then some of them, you just have to, you have to go in the general fund and use it because it's important. That's an important position.
Mr.
Thank you.
President, this
Yes,
is
Ms. Beard.
This was somewhat, I think, addressed, but it could be just the way I have it worded. But what my question is what would you do to gauge that enough professional development is being done in a certain area, or that it's the appropriate professional development to address our needs?
The appropriate, I think the answer to whether or not it's appropriate is it yielding the results it was designed to yield? So if we're spending all this time, and I'm just going to, hypothetically, if we're spending all this time on the blueprint, hypothetically, so please don't nail me for the blueprint, but if we're spending all these hours going up to Lansing and doing all this, and we have not implemented it, something is not connected. We're having some connection problems. And as I shared with you before, in our district, it was just too fast. I knew that it was too fast. There was no way that I could put teachers under that stress and myself and be effective as a superintendent. I felt that there were some other priorities that we had to address. So I think that comes down to, is the professional development getting the results that we want? But I also feel that, and I think I said this before, a first-year teacher and a 30-year teacher have different needs. So sometimes we as a district, we're doing this one size fits all. That's good in terms of a theme. Like if we're going to work on restorative practice or restorative justice, yes, we can do restorative justice, but how do I help the 30-year teacher and what he or she needs versus the first year? So we have to put opportunities for personal growth or professional growth. And that's usually done with, when you look at evaluations, they should match up. Let's give people what they need. And I say that to a board. If you feel that you're supporting me in a way that you think, but it doesn't align with what I need, then we have a problem. So we have to work together to figure out how to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, board. Are there any additional questions for Dr. Edmondson? Mr. Bennett, is there any additional from the audience?
I do
participation.
not have any additional from the audience. I would just like to remind everybody that there is a feedback form that is available in the chat room.
So you didn't say a closing remark, but I want to give my 13-year-old son is right in front of me. He's been keeping me on time, full disclosure, just doing counting down. And I just want to thank him publicly for doing that. I owe him now. He wanted some PlayStation extra time. So I figured I would give it to him, but the board has not gotten to see him. But when you do, if I am selected, first of all, it's an honor, but you're not only selecting me, you're bringing my family along too. And you know, they've been with me for 16 and 13 years, these two guys, my two sons, and I'm their biggest champion. I hope they would say that I'm their biggest champion, and that I hope that Romulus Community Schools welcomes me and my new wife and my two sons into the community. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
No, thank you, sir. We appreciate it greatly. We appreciate your continued interest in our superintendent position. We enjoyed learning more about your skills and background this evening, and also thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, and I hope to hear from you.
Thank you, sir.
Everyone. Thank you, everyone.
At this point in time, I'm going to give the floor back to Mr. Bennett.
Okay, thank you very much, President Martell. So let's go ahead and let's take 7 minutes. So I got 6:18. Let's come back at 6:25, and we will conduct the second interview. So 6:25, 7 minutes. I have reached out to Superintendent Blackwell and let her know that we're running a little bit behind. So 6:25. See you in 7.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Dorothy. 6:25. Okay, President Martell. Welcome, Dorothy. We'll be just a minute here.
Sure.
All righty.
The floor is yours, Mr. President.
Thank you so much. Forgive me for the delay. Dr. Blackwell, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you for coming. So just let me begin with our notes. We want to thank you again for joining us today. At this point in time, we are going to proceed with your presentation on your 100-day entry plan, and then that will follow up with some questions. At this time, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I'm going to present now. Let me bring this up. Can everyone see?
Yes.
Great. Okay, well, first of all, thank you. I'm honored to be here with you this evening to share my first 100 days. High expectations, high achievement, everyone, every day. So there are 6 areas that I'm going to briefly discuss today. Student achievement obviously is priority 1, but I also want to balance that, the academic with the non-academic. So it's very important to develop a very comprehensive instructional infrastructure, which I know Romulus has really put a lot of work in that already. I've looked at your high quality instructional documents. I know the work that you've done with the blueprint has been very parallel to the experience that I've had here in Vassar. So it's really important that we revisit and reestablish your 4 guiding principles, the areas of care, support, safety, and membership. And that flows so beautifully with the balance of academic and non-academic, because without the non-academic, without meeting those needs, we can't meet those academic priorities. So it's important that we have that. And another component that's important, obviously, is the social emotional health of our students, specifically as we're all experiencing right now with this pandemic. Our students definitely need that extra support and care and knowing that they're safe. I feel very strongly about collaborating with administration through data discussions. That's one of the major components, data systems and accountability. Teachers need to be able to be nimble with their decision making on how they're instructing each and every day. And to do that, you have to have data discussions, and you have to be looking at how students are performing right now. We also need to refocus the work, which you've put a beautiful foundation in your PLCs, of the 4 essential questions about what do we want our students to know, how will we know if they've learned it, what do we do if they don't, and of course those students that are pushing on. I think that's a great focus to put all of our attention, our curriculum work, making sure that we are having those vertical as well as horizontal discussions in collaboration with our data discussions. I know that you have the district and billing network, so we have to really make sure those are deeply rooted. Those systems are very important. And I think it's very important to have a comprehensive assessment program so that we're not waiting for a summative at the end, but we are able to use formative assessments all the way. Now, this area obviously aligns to your board and district initiatives in number 1, achievement and post-secondary. The CTE students, very important that we are providing those opportunities. It's, obviously college is great, but those students also have very important opportunities in CTE, military, going into the workforce. The second area that I want to share with you is governance. It's important to develop that communication between myself and the board. We have to be developing trust, positive collaboration, and I'm a true believer in team building. And so I will be engaging on meetings, meeting you, developing relations, and then, of course, hosting a retreat. That's important so that we understand the expectations clearly that we have between our roles and responsibilities and behaviors, so that you're not being surprised at the supermarket. You're going to know, because I truly believe communication, you can't overdo communication. And then I also think it's very important. I just completed this with my board here in Vassar, is the professional development series on Blueprint with our facilitator. You have Tim Kelly, who I've worked with, because that really sort of solidified the work with Blueprint and how those systems run, so that everybody understands. The Blueprint is only effective when everyone understands how the systems interact together. And of course, this area aligns with your board and district initiative of communications. My third area, very important, is community relations. First and foremost, I need to land in there and start listening and learning. I need to hear the community's perspective about what's happening. I have to start establishing those strong relationships with key leaders and union leaders of all your units, faith-based, all of these community stakeholders. I need to start getting those relationships built. Also, I have to take every opportunity when I'm out there, because I believe in visibility, to really promote our image, our positive image of what we're doing and advocating for our school district. I feel strongly also in creating events. I know right now it's not necessarily easy, but Soup with the Soup, Donuts with Dot, going to church services. I've been part of Rotary here. I've also been a part of what we call the Tuscola Lead, where leaders of the entire county come together and we make network connections with resources like health or law enforcement or court systems or businesses that can support us. And then, of course, I'm very active in social media. If you get a chance to check out the Vassar Facebook page, you'll see me reading a story to the elementary students, because I've missed them this past reading month. And this, of course, aligns to your board and district initiative of communication. My next area, of course, is efficient operations and finance. I truly believe in fiscal responsibility, and especially in this environment of declining enrollments. I've had to be very creative here at Vassar. We've had to really reach out and do a lot of grant writing. We were very blessed to get the school improvement grant for $3 million, and also successfully a $400,000 Safe Routes to School. When we went out for our bond, we couldn't get enough money, so we did an energy project and expanded that by $1.2 million. So that's something that I would be looking into right away. One thing we jumped into was the FEMA grant, so that we have, it's a 75-25 match. So 25 comes from the district for our PPE and disinfectants. The safety grants, I've gotten 2 for where I'm at currently, and I know there's more out there. So finding resources are very important. I also want to review the federal funds, the title funds, and how we are distributing them, and making sure we're being very effective with our use, stretching those dollars as far as we can, reviewing cost centers, setting up goal times settings for expectations with my staff. Accountability is important, but they need to know what's expected. So we have to set up those meetings. And then I also believe in a collaborative budget process. This year, we actually had to do a zero-based budget because we did have, before pre-COVID, had some cuts we had to make. And of course, this aligns with your fiscal responsibility, which I completely commend. I think it's important, if you are with a board policy, to put in a board policy of 10 to 15% in your fund balance. The next area that we're going to look at, of course, is technology, and of course, just stability of the operation. I think it's important to review and revise our technology plan with the appropriate staff, making sure that our policies are aligned, and making sure technology is accessible. One of the things here in the thumb that we are struggling with is getting access. We do have a more than one-to-one Google Chromebook, and we actually purchased hotspots so that we could make sure that when we are opening up here in August, that every student, if we have to go virtual, has access. So it's important to have timelines and infrastructures so that you can make upgrades and maintenance. Again, there are COVID-19 resources for technology that we will make sure that we are getting and taking advantage of. And I really want to turn that focus back on instructional technology in the classroom. So again, this aligns to your board and district initiative of technology. The next area is building capacity.
Dorothy?
Yep.
If I can just jump in for a quick sec.
Sure.
We're not quite seeing your entire slide. Well, actually, we're seeing, more of your slide than we should be seeing. It's kind of cut a little bit. So are you showing from a maximized position there on your screen?
I just see the whole slide, and I don't see any of you at all.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead. Continue. You're fine. The board has your presentation. So I'm sorry. Please continue.
That's okay. Building capacity, human capital, and talent management. And that's really a huge part of the system for Blueprint. So I want to make sure we're renewing the talent management focus in the district network for our monthly meetings, or even twice a month, depending on what area you're focusing on. Making sure, I know I've already heard that your HR department has done some updating with their interview process so that it's aligned to the appropriate competencies for your district, and making sure that we reinforce the partnerships between central office and principals. I think it's important to use some non-traditional recruitment and retention, so internships, apprenticeships, job sharing, and this, of course, aligns with your board and district initiatives of school and community. And with that, I just want to share that I'm very visible. I take pride in the school districts that I'm a part of. I'm passionate about students. I know it's important to be present. So I'm very accessible. Plus, I'm out in the buildings and in classrooms all the time because I can't hide that ego pride. So I didn't want to go long, but I hope you were able to see that PowerPoint.
Thank you. At this point in time, we'll move into the question and answer portion of the interview. With the question number one. With the uncertainty of COVID-19 and the possibility of a resurgence leading to shutdown of schools again, what do you believe is important to prepare students, families, staff, and our community so that all groups are able to experience success in classrooms as well as online teaching and learning environments?
That's such a great question today. Our governor came and shared that we've hit a plateau. I was actually looking at Wayne County and seeing how many new cases. I think you had just a little bit over 100. Plateau is not good enough. It's something that we have to be concerned about. And we also are working diligently to have that face-to-face option, but at the same time to have a virtual option. So it's important that parents are understanding what it is that we are putting into place. So I've spent many hours with my staff and administration talking back and forth because social distancing has been a real focus in my elementary. And we've been trying everything creatively. And we're now moving towards adding more sections so that we can spread kids out, and making sure that we have some teachers that are dedicated to the remote learning portion of it. So my elementary has really done a lot of hard work getting together a remote option as well as a face-to-face. Now the high school, they are also working on a face-to-face option right now. The social distancing will happen when they are actually going into the lunchroom or moving through hallways. Of course, they're wearing masks, but we ordered plexiglass dividers for all the tables and desks. They're also offering a virtual piece that we will have teachers that have total dedication to that remote. But this time we actually launched a brand new Vassar Virtual, which is completely a different program, almost like a different school. So kids can go in and access completely 18 credits to graduate. So what I think is important coming in is collaborating with staff, making sure we're on top of this communication with the health department. I have Ann Heffer, happens to be our health department contact. She's on my speed dial. So as we are going through and talking about taking temperatures, which is something we felt very strongly about, and making sure masks are available. Because I know in the plan, it says that we are to ask our community, our parents to provide those things, make sure they're checking their kids, make sure they're providing masks. And I know here in Vassar, we have free breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I know that my families need support, so we're going to be providing those masks for them. And so it's important that everybody knows what's going to happen. We're actually working on a video to show here's what school is going to look like when the bus pulls up. This is what's going to look like when you get your temp check, when you get your mask, and when you're seated on the bus safely, making sure your hands are sanitized. So each step is a communication, a collaboration. Now, I'm very concerned about the virtual aspect because, as you know, previously there weren't the same types of expectation of grading and attendance. And so we've worked hard to make sure that we've redeployed our staff so that if we do go back into that total remote situation, if she rolls back into phase 3, that not only do we have teachers touching base with our students academically, but I also are utilizing all the staff and my mental health support folks to make sure they're touching base with students to see how they're doing, how they're feeling, and how families are feeling. So I have to just emphasize that it's a fluid situation, and as numbers, as virus infections increase, right now the number is not where we want it. I know they want it to come down. We just have to be fluid in understanding how this impacts our students in the classroom, how it impacts our students on the athletic field, and how it impacts our entire community. So it's a partnership, definitely.
Thank you. Next. Because education and the external environment are constantly changing, our superintendent should be forward-looking and anticipate and plan for those changes. Please share your approach to monitoring and organizing appropriate responses to changes in these environments and provide an example of when you've done so.
Yes, well, we're in the perfect example now since everything's changing each and every day. But I think it's important to have guidance from our strategic plan. So one of the first things I would want to work with the board is making sure we develop, because you do have some very clear board and district initiatives. So having that strategic plan document aligning our mission and our vision together and looking forward. And that's exactly what I've done here in my district. We brought the board together and developed some belief statements, what the things are that we believe. And one of the most important parameters was that funding for K-12 would be protected. That would be first and foremost. And that aligned beautifully with our fund balance policy of 10 to 15%. So those were the filters that we used when we started making decisions, because there's limited resources. So we brought stakeholders from all over, and it just happened to coincide with the time we were doing bonds. So we made sure we brought some of the folks that we knew were against the bond, and we sat down and made some action teams. So obviously there was an academic improvement one. There was a facilities looking to the future, because a bond, can only get you to a certain point. You need a new roof in 20 years. So we needed to have a maintenance budget timeline of how we were going to maintain. So looking forward, we also know we were declining enrollment. So that was why actually the Vassar virtual concept was conceived a lot earlier, because we knew we had to offer something that maybe other districts weren't, so that we could grab some students that were specific, knowing that they didn't need the electives, but they really wanted the core. So always looking ahead of what it is that we could offer students. One thing that we spent a lot of time with, and I would believe I would do the same, is in CTE, reaching out to businesses, and we were trying to create apprenticeships. So we do have a wonderful CTE program with our Tuscola Intermediate School District, but I had students that would talk to us and say, hey, I want to be a plumber, or I want to be an HVAC, and they didn't have some of those offerings. So we started reaching out to find out, were there ways to get apprenticeships? So we're looking ahead to meet the needs of our students. And the only way you know what your students need, you have to talk to them. One of the most powerful things I've done is have a monthly student body luncheon where I provide pizza. And once those kids come in and they start talking about what's going on, the filter's gone. And so I heard right away what their concerns were, their fears of college, or what their futures would be. And having those discussions with students really helps to make a connection to aligning what our strategic plan has laid out, to make sure that we are using that to guide our decisions and filter through our decisions, because the resources are limited. That's why we have to always look out for more resources. When you ask for an example, when I came here, I could tell that I knew about the Safe Route School grant because I actually participated at Waverly Community Schools, and there's a lack of sidewalks here. So I reached out to them right away, Safe Routes to Schools, and started working because it was a long process because it also involves the city. So that we brought in $400,000 there, looking ahead, providing sidewalks, bike paths, very safe ways to and from school. So it just comes right down to knowing that we're aligning our mission, our vision to our strategic plan, working together, and making sure all stakeholder voices are there.
Thank you. From your experiences, what strategies or programs have you used to increase academic scores for all students, and what was your specific role in the process?
So my background before coming here to be superintendent, I was an academic consultant for Ingham Intermediate School District. And I actually worked in schools that were identified as low performing or focused schools. So I was the one that was coaching and leading instructional learning cycles. And so going into classrooms, meeting with teachers, and starting to design interventions for them so that they could utilize the data from a universal screener and make changes in their instruction. Again, administer that universal screener and see growth, so that we developed a process. So I had a lot of that background from being a curriculum director in Waverly and then my academic consultant years. So when I came here to Vassar, we wrote a $3 million school improvement grant, and our focus was embedded coaching. We knew that if we really wanted to make a change instructionally in the classroom, and this is a secondary, we had to get in the classroom and change what was happening with teachers delivering. So we actually reached out to the local colleges, Michigan State, University of Michigan, and had coaches come in and help with training teachers. We had time slotted out for teachers to receive professional development on specifically student engagement. That's where we started, student engagement. We had areas of need, obviously in math and English, but we knew that we needed to get student engagement where it needed to improve. So we went in the classrooms, the teachers worked collaboratively with their coaches and administrators and identified key engagement strategies. And we aligned that with our evaluation tool. We have a walk-through evaluation tool. So the principals, when they come in to do evaluations, they're looking for those specific engagement strategies happening. And then collecting data, how many students are engaged, what is the teacher teaching right at that moment, and then asking students, what are you learning? And that made huge strides. Like I said, we were at 3% and we jumped up 50 points. It was amazing, the change, because when you first walk in the classroom, it was very passive. And so it was compliant, but there was no engagement. Kids were just sitting there passively. And with this professional development and focus on engagement of students, you saw a turnaround. You saw students more engaged, students questioning, students utilizing technology, staff more mobile around the room. And so the excitement there is that obviously we got off the list of low performing, but we continue to see that increase academic achievement in the classroom because those engagement strategies now have become second nature. And now with our data discussions, we're able to focus in on those areas, those standards that our students struggle with the most.
Thank you. Superintendent, how will you determine when to inform the board of education versus engaging us in actual decision-making?
Well, I believe it's a partnership. So transparency is very important to me. Like I said, you shouldn't hear it first at the supermarket. You should already know something happened from me. So it's a discussion, a dialogue. So if we are making some decisions like this reopening, we have we call it the DAN, you call it your district network. We have a board member that actually sits there, and we discuss what we're doing for a reopening plan. And then if I need a board committee, a small committee, I'm able to bring them together and talk to them if there's something specific to finance, and then of course bring it to the whole board. So Informing, in my mind, is more of the weekly highlights. Okay, here are our super readers of the week, and here are our kids that got a CTE certificate. That's more informing, or giving you some of the legislative changes or some of the budget things coming down. But when we're making decisions that impact our students, that's going to be a collaboration, a partnership, because all voices need to be heard. To make sure that we are aligning to what we said we're going to do, and that we have the resources to fund it. So I think it's important that we are in communication, so that we know what's coming next. I'm in a bond project right now, and so updating the board is something that I do, depending on what the project is. For instance, my roof has been leaking. I'm on it with the board, taking pictures and showing them, hey, here's what we're dealing with, so that they know that we are managing our projects appropriately and effectively. So it's a partnership that it will be a communication two-way.
Thank you. What potential concerns do you have about this position?
Well, actually, Jay asked that earlier in the open house, and the open house was wonderful. I got to speak to Yolanda, Roxanne, Julia. So I don't anticipate issues with transition, even though I'm in a very rural, small district right now. I come from Waverly Community Schools. I was at Ingham Intermediate working with several of the urban schools, as well as charters and the parochials. I've been an administrator in Lansing. I have had my foundation has been built in urban settings. And I'm actually very excited about the whole the opportunity of being a part of an urban setting. I guess my biggest is that I've got to get in there, because we've got this opening plan. This reopening plan is due, and I need to get with teachers to start collaborating, because the safety of our teachers is paramount, and our staff, our overall staff, is paramount. And getting to know everyone, the community, I need to start those listening tours like I shared with you, and start building relationships. So right now in August, just like everything's changing fluidly every day. So my biggest challenge is that I need to get in there right away and hit the ground running. And I'm excited. I'm excited to do that. I have a lot of energy. I'm very visible and active with the community, with my staff, with my students. So though, I have found when there's been an issue, especially like even when I came here to Vassar had issues. It had the MEP situation. It had failed bond. It had low morale. Coming in and working collaboratively with the staff, because teachers, staff members, they're passionate about kids. That's what they're there for. And I'm passionate. And, we'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. For kids, and looking for resources. I don't let finances get in the way, because there is ability to go and find more resources, make more connections and co-partnerships with businesses and such. So I'm excited. The challenge is exciting to me.
Thank you. Next, we know you need to do more fact-finding when you get to the district, and we'll gather input from the staff on past initiatives. But based on your research of Romulus, what is one thing you think you may be able to immediately improve upon with a different perspective? And what is one thing you believe you are excited about because of its success?
I'm excited because you are a blueprint district. I've had a lot of success with building systems in many school districts, not just Vassar, because I also when I was in Ingham, I actually did blueprint facilitating. So I'm really excited about being a part of revitalizing your work there, because those systems being in place is really going to help the district really get to the priorities that you've listed. So I'm really excited about that. I know with my research a little bit, I know that there was some discussion that you were looking at restructuring buildings at one time, and I know you've passed your sinking fund. And so if that's a direction that the board wants to look at, I welcome that discussion. That would involve community and stakeholders to best meet the needs of our students. So I would be excited with being a part of that. I've been a part of that at Waverly Community Schools when we've had to do some restructuring of buildings and grades. Those changes. I think another thing that I would bring is the collaboration. Basically, breaking down any kind of barriers between administration and staff and all of the units to truly be able to, after time passed, to look back to say, wow, look how far we've come. That's what I'm experiencing right now. I'm experiencing now in my 5th year. We are doing innovative programs. We've brought in several grants. We have the CEP program. We're able to do so much more because we've been very efficient with how we've utilized each and every dollar. So, and I've got staff that are excited. They're excited about kids, even in this turmoil that we're having. They're excited and wanting to do the right things. And that's what you need. You need teachers that are excited to be in there with students. And I believe that is the excitement I'm going to be sharing with you, is that you're going to see that what those priorities are going to become actually implemented and come to fruition, because you'll hear it from students. I just did graduation, and I couldn't hug them. I could only do an elbow bump, but just being able to know each and every one of them and getting to know what their future choices are and who they were as a student, that's important. And I believe that I would bring to Romulus that level of care, compassion, also high expectation, pushing our students to always improve, pushing our teachers to be better teachers. And that would be the excitement we would share together.
Thank you. Next, please give an example of how you have handled resistance to change and/or criticism from stakeholders.
Well, right away there, I had to deal with a lot of criticism here in Vassar when I entered, because as I mentioned, they were involved in the MEP program. It was a third-party virtual program, and there was lots of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars that the state was taking back. So the community was already against the school district. At the same time, we were trying to pass a bond, and that did not go over very well with our Tea Partiers and our some of our farmers, our large farmers. So coming in, I had the excitement of the staff, but I definitely had the community that we needed to turn around. And I came in very excited, very visible, went out into the community, went to the library, actually sought out naysayers, sought out people that were feeling like the school was were not fiscally responsible, and had those conversations with them. Did I change minds? I don't know. It took us 3 times before we passed the bond, and we refocused our strategy on the yes vote. But what I found, though, is that people who may have had some kind of issue with how the school district was spending money, because I always connected the MEP situation with the administration, even though I wasn't here, and how we would spend money on maintenance and taking care of the construction project, they still felt able to come and talk. They would actually, they would come to my events and they would talk. We have like a senior breakfast event where all the senior citizens would come, and they would come up and ask me point blank about situations. There was no fear at all. So I do believe in being accessible and open. And I actually encourage people who have different ideas, especially administratively, so that we are actually looking at a project or an initiative or an idea from all perspectives. So yes, I have lived through some situations where, I walked in and it's really negative. But here I am at the end of a construction project. And here I am, being able to use resources from many grants. And I'm feeling like we've been a great success.
Thank you. Next, what measures can you take to be as diligent as possible in keeping staff and students safe and healthy while in our buildings?
Oh, well, let's just talk about the reopening plan. I think it's important. We actually wrote a grant in addition to our construction budget for secure entrances. So secure entrances was a focus for us in all of our buildings here. Secure entrances were number 1. In the reopening plan, I have, like I said, thermometers there to check, as well as a way to do a screening for our adults coming into our offices. We've designed everything so that there's one location for coming in. So making sure that students are safe in that manner, to make sure that we are watching who's coming in. We also wrote a grant for extra cameras. So we have cameras all over. I think it's important to have cameras so that we can see situations. It's actually been so beneficial to me with situations on playgrounds and situations in lunchrooms and situations on buses to make sure that we're safe, not only my students, but my staff. You know, we have an EOP. So it's really important to have that operational plan in place for how you're going to handle any kind of crisis situation. We use the Kideo app, so that's something that I can get emergency information out to everyone at a touch of a button on a phone or on a computer. So we make sure each year that we are training our staff in safety protocols. Of course, we've done ALICE, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and brought our law enforcement officers in to help our staff to prepare for those types of situations. Going back to the reopening plan, I'm in constant conversation with the health department connection. And as I said, we've ordered a PPE to make sure that our staff is protected, plexiglass dividers, masks, gowns, gloves, all of the, sanitation, making sure hand washing. So we put together sick rooms that are divided with plastic curtains and have the N95 masks there, making sure that we're making sure all protocols are being followed there for safety. So safety is number one. It's important to us. I think that, when we start talking about, using the outside for the reopening, because we've talked about that for the cafeteria, we also have to be aware of safety for our students if they're outside on the grounds, just as we would for our athletes. So safety is very important to me, not only with students, but for our staff, because I know there will be situation in the future here where COVID may happen. And so we have to have our protocols and procedures in place, and everyone needs to know what happens. Everyone needs to know the expectations for if we have someone who's exposed and how we handle that. So that will also be a part of our EOP. So that plan is in place and everyone knows who the communications person is, who's going to be talking to the media, who's going to be putting out the press release. And you as board members obviously are going to be right in the know right away when something happens.
Thank you. Next. The world of public education is constantly changing and evolving with new ideas coming out all the time to address core standards. When looking at a new approach, initiative, or curriculum, how much time should be given to be able to measure its success in implementation or results?
We have a curriculum cycle. It's a part of our administrative regulations. It's a part of our board policy. And I've been a curriculum director in my previous job. So we have to have a cycle for all the content areas. We worked very hard, I know, to align our resources, which is our finances, to make purchases of materials. So we have curriculum committee. And those representatives of the committee will actually be the ones that collect the data, are able to come in and show how our students are performing, where our gaps are, where we need more materials, or if we need to move away from a text and go into another area. So that curriculum committee will come together, and it's not only a vertical but a horizontal, so that we're making sure we're aligning to the grade before and after. So those staff members are critical voice. Your staff has put together the high quality visions of instruction. So they've written down what they say is quality practices in the classroom. So they already are right there at the top of knowing what needs to be delivered, and they also know what materials that they need. So we have to be fiscally responsible to budget appropriately. Where I'm at, we're able to utilize our 31A monies so that we would align those monies to match our curriculum cycle so that we would have finances, whether a content area went for materials or something different. professional development is incredibly important. So my elementary did neuroplasticity because they're doing guided readings, small reading groups. This is their 3rd year that they've had embedded professional development and made purchases into their libraries, so they have their book rooms and such. So the period of time we've done, we try to do a 5-year cycle to the best of our ability. But we know, for instance, I'll give you an example. Math has been an area of need in our elementary, and so we right away that curriculum group got together, and specifically our secondary folks were sharing some of the issues that they were having, that they were seeing students coming through middle school, and so they found specifically a text that, and it's not just text, it's digital as well, that would help us with some of those gaps. So we do a pilot program, obviously. So it comes to the Board of Education. They share their pilot programs and what program they ultimately, as a curriculum council and the group, decides. And that aligns with the financial part that we've already budgeted for to do that. So curriculum, you can have the best curriculum, the most expensive curriculum in the world, but that doesn't mean it's what our students need, because it depends on the delivery of what our teachers are doing in the classroom each and every day. So that's, really important to use student data to drive those decisions.
Thank you. Next, please give us an example of a time that you had to make a decision based solely upon revenues and budget constraints.
Yes. So pre-COVID, my school district currently is facing declining enrollment, and we were starting to bleed out about $300,000 of a fund equity we have really worked hard to build up. So we're about 15% now, but we could see how things were going. So we had to, as I had mentioned earlier, we did we did that zero-based budgeting. We actually went line by line by line to make sure that we were using our dollars effectively. And we had to bring to the board, before COVID hit, $350,000 worth of cuts. And so we, as an administrative team with our board and with our units, we looked at ways that we could make some of those reductions. So we took a reduction in the administrative unit, we took a reduction in our instructional unit, and in our support unit. So it was equally divided at that time. Hard decision, obviously, whenever you have to lay off folks or reduce programs, but we did it. And then right after we did it, we got hit with the whole COVID situation and that potential, 700 per pupil cut. So then we went right back to the drawing board and designed 3 scenarios for my Board of Education, because we still don't know. Obviously, we know 1920 now, what they've done. And there was a little bit of a cut, but then they gave back with the COVID dollars, with the CARES Act dollars, which are restrictive, by the way. So you don't have the flexibility to use it as you would need it. But it's definitely, it puts us in a better spot. So we were able to dip into our fund balance a little bit, not that much. It wasn't that bad, about 200,000, I believe. But in 2021, I know that their conference is coming together August 24th for them, the budget review, so that they can come and make some decisions on what's happened in 2021. And we had planned, for what the most serious cut would be. And so again, we want to make sure that we stay true to our policy. And so the board had decided that we're going to stay with the 10%. And so we would have to make those reductions. And we took all the reductions out of cost centers to the best of our ability. We also put together a voluntary severance package. So to take advantage of what's going on right now. And we're not replacing teachers who are leaving us. And so that has obviously put some pressure on us, especially as we're trying to redistribute staff so that we can have social distancing. But made a lot of hard decisions with budget and made cuts when needed.
Thank you. Next, if you are hired to be our next superintendent, what noticeable differences will you make in the Romulus Community Schools?
Well, first of all, I'm going to move in and you're going to see me. I'm going to be very active in the community. I'm going to be active, getting to know people right away in the buildings, talking with leadership, talking with, your unit leadership, stakeholders. You're going to see me. You're going to see an obvious push out there in social media in the public about what we're doing and why we are an attractive location for your students to be a part of, why you want to be an Eagle, why you want to be at Romulus. So you're going to see me very active that way. I'm going to be very involved, working with principals, working with Tim, obviously with the blueprint, making sure that that's, up and going as well. So the noticeable difference is you're going to see me and we're going to be spending time together because we need to start building relationships, get that retreat going so that you understand my expectations. I understand your expectations. So we know where we're going because we've got to have that plan together. And it's important that our community is confident that we are ready to reopen, whether it be completely virtual or if it's a face-to-face and virtual choice. They need to know that we're ready to go. So we have to show them that. We have to communicate that. So that's what they're going to see. So you're also going to see me reaching out to students. One of the first things I did here was I had an ice cream social. And I know we're not in the perfect situation for it, but I actually did one social distance with masks and we were spread out. And I was talking about our new virtual program, but getting to see the students and talking to them and finding out what their goals and dreams are. So that the noticeable difference is you're going to see me. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be active, making sure that I understand how your systems work, making sure I have an understanding of your cost centers, making sure that I understand where we're going with curriculum, because that's really important. We got an SAT that we got to administer, turning around for the seniors. So there are just a lot of things that I will be very involved in.
Thank you. Next, please tell us about your experience with Blueprint and how you see it being used in Romulus in the future.
Well, I'm excited about Blueprint. I'm excited about Tim. The district network, which you have established, and your building networks. I know there's been a lot of work around your visions of high quality instruction. I know you've put in place your hiring, your competencies for talent management. So my job is to keep that train a-moving. Making sure that everybody understanding the systems is just as important. So let me just share with you, when I came here at Vassar, I already had experience with the Blueprint, but people here didn't really understand it, besides the handful of people that got the opportunity to go to professional development, which Blueprint does an excellent job of. So it really doesn't help to have just one group of people understanding. Everybody, including the board, including community, including even students, they need to know, what is this Blueprint? Because if it's in isolation, it doesn't work. So what I'm excited about is it's been so effective for me in the non-academic and academic area. It's given us refocus and revitalization of resources, being able to use surveys. So we're surveying staff. We're surveying to see, are our communication protocols working? What about those visions of high quality instruction? We had to do that too, and we had to do it twice. So we actually had to back up the train when we started getting survey data where people weren't really understanding what was happening. And so in a professional development, we brought people together again and said, okay, whoa. People are confused on what this Blueprint meant. And so the one most powerful thing that we did is we had the gym, and we had people actually physically stand in each of the systems of the Blueprint. As you remember the rings of the Blueprint, you've got your resources, and you have all of the systems that are divvied up. And so each person was a representative of the system, and they went and talked to another system, and they explained, this is what I do in my system. And it was amazing to me how different it was when they got to the tables and started talking about, oh, I didn't know talent management meant that. Oh, I didn't know support system meant that. So there are ways to make the Blueprint more tangible. and understanding how the Blueprint helps us be more effective. So I'm extremely excited about Blueprint because I think it's been a part of our success here is utilizing it. And even though we had to take a couple steps back, and that's what you'll find out, I'm sure, talking to Tim and then other people that have done the Blueprint, you get a couple steps forward, you need to take a step back. The last professional development I did with my board really brought it home for my board to understand why we were talking this way, what we were doing. You know, students, no matter what, we do what's right for students. And they really started to understand their role for how they would support the system. So yeah, I'm excited about Blueprint. I know that you guys have got your foundation put there, so I'm ready to revitalize it and move it forward.
Thank you so much. And finally, what is your approach to furthering the development of a highly effective leadership team? And how do you evaluate the success of your approach?
I think I mentioned last week in my interview about there's the development of many leadership teams. So there's a leadership team with me and the board. There's a leadership team with central administration and principals. There's a leadership team with teacher leaders, union leaders. There are several leadership teams. I believe strongly that you have to build trust. And you have to develop those relationships. I'm a real proponent for team building. I've done team building in every school district I've ever been a part of. If it was a normal year, which it's not, we would go on a retreat. I have had very effective use of low ropes, even high ropes activities, or just team activities as a group, because you're able to start breaking down some of those natural barriers and able to get to some real truth from people about why they're in their position, what their goals are, what they want to accomplish, and that's when you take that and align it to what we're trying to achieve for Romulus. Making that connection for my leadership team of, you know, what's your purpose here? So they have to have expectations. One of the things I did right away when I came here, Ambassadors, everybody got evaluated. It had been years. If they weren't legally required, it'd been years that people never got evaluated. So the first thing we said is everyone's going to get evaluated by your supervisor, whether it be custodial, bus, whatever, and you're all going to set goals. And we set a time period and supported, because there was a lot of technology. We moved our whole evaluation system online. And so we worked very diligently with everyone. So there was clear expectations. And you have to have that, because there are unfortunately times where you might have to counsel a teacher that this isn't the right place for them, or a support staff member. And so you set those expectations. We always did a mid-year check to make sure how were we working. So with my principals specifically, because they are the most important when it comes to making sure that they're supporting and helping their teachers to improve and become better. I work very closely with principals in a partnership. In the Blueprint, as you know, there is a central office principalship partnership. Me being in a small school, I'm partners with everybody. So I'm right there side by side with my principals. If they need time, you know, because there's a lot of fires that the office takes care of. If she or he needs time to be in a classroom or to do something, I can step in and I can help as an administrator. I can do that. We had a time here where we didn't have enough support for evaluations. I evaluate. I mean, I have my teacher certificate. So to me, it's really important to develop leadership teams so that you build this belief and understanding of why we're here, what we're going to do, whatever it takes. There are no barriers if we plan correctly, if we look long-term at what our goals are. And the Blueprint is a beautiful vehicle to help that happen. It gives us protocols, procedures, so that we understand. It's just like the data discussions I've been talking to you about with teachers, with student achievement. It's the same thing happening at the Blueprint level. It's gathering data to see how we are doing and how we're going to impact change. I'll give you one quick example. So we had collected data and we had identified that student attendance was a big deal. We had a lot of problems in the elementary. And so instead of some of the traditional things, we were using School Messenger because we had it and we never used it before. So we would make phone calls, and almost overnight, when a parent started getting a call, they were getting their kids to school. So that changed so quickly. My elementary principal was so ecstatic at the change because, we were talking about tardies and, utilizing the tardy officer and everything, and we didn't even have to go that far, and we made a change. So leadership, I believe I'm a servant leader, and I believe that I strongly believe in collaboration because each person has gifts that they bring, strengths that they bring. There's a reason they're here in our school district, and utilizing each one of us to solve the problems that we have ahead of us. So the better I can make my leaders and my leadership teams, the better they can turn around and work with their staffs. Because bottom line is that teacher in the classroom. We have to have self-reflecting teachers that are critical in a good way of how they're instructing, and they're being able to look at how they're instructing and ask for help and support, get that support and help, and continue to push themselves to be better. When a new teacher comes in, they don't have a lot of time to get, classroom management and processes and protocols. But as a principal, when I'm working with a new teacher, with their mentor, these are great opportunities to start molding them into the types of teachers that we want for our students. So I have great excitement working with leadership teams.
Thank you. At this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bennett for community questions or concerns before we conclude.
Thank you, President Martell. So just a reminder, the link for the feedback forms is in the chat. I do have a couple questions here. You can email me questions. My address is in the chat as well. So Superintendent Blackwell, we have done lots of coaching here in Romulus throughout the years. What do you feel is the most important factor to make your model most successful?
I think coaching, as I mentioned, it's important to embed the coaching. It can't be go off to a PD and come back, and you've been coached. It's a model that happens with teachers where they're getting that support throughout. So it's, I do, you do, we do. So they're working hand in hand with teachers. So you have to utilize your time. So I know we have prep time, and here in our district, we utilize prep time to do this so that we're working with those coaches to support teachers throughout their experience. And coaching with administrators the same way. Helping that principal, walking side by side with that principal so that you're supporting them each and every day as they're working. So the coaching model works because it's something that is embedded and there throughout, so that when a teacher hits a wall and say, oh, this didn't work like I thought it was going to work, and then instead of just giving up because there's nobody to turn to, you've got a coach, or you have some other teacher leaders that you can turn to, or a principal that you can turn to get some support. Coaching to me has been the most effective change agent for really making classrooms look different. And making sure that we're, taking advantage of that coaching where they can model and they can support and they can give critique, and allowing the teacher's ability to step back and go into other classrooms as well and do some critiquing and watching and modeling. So I know that coaching, I've had success with it, and it's worked very well where I'm at currently.
Okay, thank you. How do you feel about balanced literacy? And would you be open to look at other approaches to teach reading in a more systematic and explicit way?
Yes. Yes, I shared the example that we've done a lot of balanced literacy in Vassar here. Previous to this, when I was an instructional coach, yes, we did a very prescribed reading program. And it, actually we were very successful, but that integrated MTSS and universal screeners. And we were using interventions with that curriculum so that students, in a formative way, we were seeing changes rapidly. And so if there was an intervention group that had to get a double dose or had to get a triple dose, we were able to act nimbly, quickly. We didn't have to just wait. I know that guided reading is very time consuming. You have to be very organized to do that well. And I know that when you look at more of a prescribed curriculum for reading. It's laid out pretty nicely, and it's very explicit for what you're teaching. So yes, I've actually had experience in both areas, and I've seen success actually in both areas. And I had mentioned earlier the instructional learning cycles that I've done worked beautifully using those types of reading programs.
Thank you. President Martell, that is all the questions that I have. Now would be an appropriate time for follow-up questions from your fellow board members.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. At this time, the floor is open for the board.
President Martell, this is Ms. Kennard, may I?
Yes, ma'am. The floor is yours, Ms. Kennard.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Blackwell, in your presentation, you had an area where you spoke in efficient operations and finance. You talked about fiscal responsibility. My question is relating to budget cuts. How will you approach the anticipated budget cuts without compromising necessarily programs and services for special needs and under-resourced students?
Perfect. That's a perfect question. And so that beautifully aligns with the strategic plan. So we have our priorities, protecting student programming, at all costs. That's the top filter that we look through. That's why I think zero-based budgeting works so effectively, because we are looking line by line. And that's why here in my district currently, I was able to take huge chunks out of cost centers that was staying far away from programming. So making sure that we were running as lean and as efficiently as we could in the areas that we have access. As you know, 75% of your budget is wages and benefits. So I understand it's very important that we protect our special needs and our underrepresented students, because that's what our job is. That's what we're here for. That's why I speak very strongly about trying to bring in more resources, because I don't see budgets getting any better. So we need to plan ahead and make sure that we're protecting, our teaching programs, our special programs, and seeing where else we can make cuts. I mean, even here in the thumb, when we started hearing those devastating numbers, we were looking at transportation. We were trying to find anything that was furthest away from the student in the classroom. And like I said, I believe zero-based budgeting allows for that conversation, because a lot of times when you get to the nitty-gritty, it's always a want and not really something you need. And I also think being very diligent with title monies. We are very fortunate here in Vassar to have a lot of title funding. And so we've worked hard to meticulously use every dollar towards programming to the best of our ability, and stretching that dollar, those resources, through grants that we've been able to add on. So great question. Yes, I agree totally that programs for those our most needy students are very important and should be protected.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions from the board, please?
I have a question.
Floor is yours, Ms. Piles.
Hi, Superintendent Blackwell. You
Hello.
had mentioned that with the bond, you talked about collaboration and bringing in different stakeholder groups. And something I lifted is you said you specifically brought in people who you knew were against passing the bond. So I would like to know, as you come here and you think about collaboration, and you're working with groups of people who have maybe been part of collaboration before, but then felt like, they weren't really heard, or there's groups that are adamantly opposed to something. How do you go about bringing people in? And when you worked with those groups, what did you do specifically to bring them in and see the need?
Well, I had to go out to them. That was the first thing. I actually went out to some church services. I went out to a meeting specifically that we had in the library, because that's where some of the Tea Party meetings were. So I actually had to seek them out. And I'm very active in our social media for our Vassar Public Schools. And let me tell you, the community lets you know how they feel about everything. So I can actually click on and private message someone and say, you know, whoa, hey, would you like to come and talk? I mean, they only believe you once you actually walk the talk. You know, I understand where you're coming from. You know, we went through all this rigmarole and it was supposed to be collaboration, but then you went and did what you wanted to do. That you get nowhere. I mean, that's a quick way to be done. So you have to be upfront. If there's something you can't do, you have to explain why it won't work. You have to collaborate. That's what collaboration is, so that there's many ideas. Because when I did talk to some of the naysayers that were saying, oh, you only need $5 million. That's all you need. I had to understand where they were coming from. That's the beauty of diversity, right? It's actually sort of celebrating and understanding where people's perspectives are, how they're different, and where some of these people come from. And I'm speaking specifically of the Tea Party folks. You know, they came from they felt like money was being wasted, and they had specific examples. You know, Dot, are you going to be putting a shingle roof on that elementary again? Where are you going to be in 20 years? Why aren't you putting a metal roof on there? So you have to allow the conversation, and you have to create a sort of like a fear-free or a risk-free environment to be able to say those things and talk about it. In the end, you know, and when I'm with my administration, we're making hard decisions. We hear the voices, we talk about it, we try to be creative, but in the end, ultimately the buck stops with me. I have to make a decision, but you're going to know why. You're going to know why we went in that direction. So I think it's important to engage the folks, because a lot of times they only heard one side of the story and they don't know all. That's one thing that I look forward to when I engage with parents that come in angry about something. It's important to de-escalate and listen. You know, I'm a mama bear. If something happens to my student, I know how I'm going to react. So it's making that personal connection with a person and finding that middle ground, that we're here for the same reason. We're all here to help our kids. That's what the ultimate goal is. So I think it's important to create that collaborative, honestly collaborative environment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional from the board, please.
Mr. President, this is Teresa Beard.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Superintendent Blackwell. I would like to ask you a question in regards to the blueprint. Our district has been utilizing blueprint. It's kind of been on a hold for a while. I personally, as a board member, feel that we haven't had 100% buy-in by everybody. And so when you mentioned that, you know, it's not a bad idea to go back, to go forward, how would you reintroduce the blueprint to get the buy-in that we might need in order to continue, if we decide to continue with it?
Well, it's exactly like I said. When only certain groups understand it, that's when I utilize my communication. So through professional development, when I bring the district together, I speak about the blueprint. I use that time to do some training about the blueprint, and I show how the things they do in the blueprint helps them in the classroom. That's where you get buy-in. You get buy-in when it's not this abstract concept, but it actually helps me in the classroom. So problem solving, let me use that example, because we did struggle with this. This was an example of where we took a couple steps back. There was a it's Lipton and Wellman, problem solving steps where you had to collect data and sort of anticipate how the students would perform, and do that step-by-step protocol. Very explicit about how to do it. And teachers who didn't understand were getting really caught up in, you know, this really doesn't really reflect how this data is not really accurate and how it was administered. You know, there were lots of excuses that came out. And so we had to work through that. We had to show how the problem solving protocol helped us to depersonalize the data, so that we could actually use some interventions to impact change. So if you've taken a step back from the blueprint, you're not alone. Let me tell you, there are I've been to many blueprint meetings where we've all shared our journey and talked about the frustrations we've hit with the blueprint, and trying to establish some systems, and how we've had to take a back seat or go in another direction and take chunks that were effective right away. So communications, very effective right away. Change the way we communicated through our email systems, through our phone calls, through our robocalls, through our everything that we did started getting filtered through with communication protocol, and we surveyed the staff to find out, is it working? Do you know what it is? And you'd be surprised at the couple that's a nope, don't know. So we focused on the data, and that's what it all comes down to, right? Making change and impacting instructional change is to actually collect that data of how students are performing or how staff is performing on a system, and then implement some kind of intervention. So with the blueprint, like I said, I would be working obviously in partnership with the administration that's already been a part of Blueprint and Tim. That's why I want to do a board series so that you as a board also will understand your part and how you impact and influence the blueprint and the work that we have there. So I think, like I told you, if it's an abstract idea and separated from what you're trying to accomplish day to day, you're not going to get buy-in. But it's our job to make connections to how these systems work for them to make their job easier, better, and more effective.
Thank you. You're muted, Ms. Beard. Any additional from the board at this time? Okay, before we move forward, again, last call for any questions for Superintendent Blackwell before we turn it back over to Jay. Mr. Bennett, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Martell. Now would be an appropriate time to wish farewell to Superintendent Blackwell. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Blackwell. And just very briefly, we appreciate your continued interest in our superintendent position. We enjoyed learning more about your skills and background this evening, and also enjoyed your 100-day presentation. And we thank you again, and our board will be in contact with you if you're chosen as moving forward.
Thank you so much. I'm very honored to have the opportunity to have this conversation with you. I just want to leave you with, I'm very excited. I think that it would be a wonderful partnership, and I know that we can make great strides for our students together. So go Eagles.
Thank you again. Have a good night.
Okay.
Mr. Bennett.
Thank you.
Steve?
With that, I have 7:36. So I have sent you the first batch. Well, I sent you 2 emails. So I sent you the feedback from the virtual open houses. I sent you a first batch of feedback forms. I've gotten some additional feedback forms that are continuing to come in. So I will send those to you in a few minutes. Let's take 15 minutes. So let's come back at 7:50. And we will continue. So 15 minutes, 7:50, we'll come back. I'll continue to send you those feedback as they come in. Community members, please feel free to fill out the feedback forms and let the board members know how you felt about the interviews tonight. I will pop that in the chat here again. All the feedback forms will make their way back to the board for consideration. Thank you very much, and see you at 7:50. Okay, board members, I've got 750. I have sent you the second batch of response forms. You now have all of the response forms. I am not seeing any additional ones other than the ones that I've sent you. So please continue to read those over. And as you start to come back in front of me here, I see Ursula. Hi, Ursula. I see Danielle. I see Denisa. And there's Teresa. Debbie. Hi, Debbie. So have you all had an opportunity? You're still reading through the forms? Okay.
Yes.
So go ahead. Yep. Go ahead. Take some additional time to read through the forms. And I will mute myself and just let me know when you're ready. Just to let the community know. So the board members are reading through the feedback forms that have been sent in. Once we're done with the feedback forms, we'll talk about the reference checks. Then we'll talk about the candidates. And then we will go from there. So hang tight with us. We'll be right back with you. Okay. President Martell?
Yes, sir.
All right. So it looks like everyone's had an opportunity to look through the feedback forms for tonight. Okay. So a couple of things on my end. So background checks. Background checks came back clear. One minor hiccup, and this is only because of COVID. So one of the, they do several courthouse checks in several counties for each of the two individuals. And one of the courthouses in one of the counties estimates that they'll be able to provide this information by October 27th. So I don't know that we're going to get that in a timely manner, but everything else checks out. So I'm not worried about that. All the rest of the databases check out. The sex offender registry, the domestic watch list, the other counties, they all check out. So I don't see this as a problem. I just want to be upfront with you and just let you know that one of the counties that they attempted to contact notified the background check company that because of COVID and their paper files and no one's allowed to go into the building and blah, 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 they estimate the completion date to be October 27th. So that is some of the things that we do occasionally run into during this pandemic, but everything else on both candidates came back squeaky clean, so I have no concerns on the background checks. Reference checks. So I talked to references for both candidates, no concerns. I talked to board presidents from both candidates' current or previous districts. The board presidents had nothing but fantastic things to say about both. Super great. Would hate to lose her, and that was for Dorothy. Motivated, 100% into her work. For Dr. Edmondson, kids loved him, staff loved him. Instills his enthusiasm in others. Communicated well with the board every stop of the way. Sometimes was too honest with the board. So, I mean, no concerns on any of the reference checks that I did. Everything came through. A visionary, not a problem solver, but a solution finder. So again, no concerns with any of the reference checks that I did. Those all came back nice as well. So what I would like to do is I would like to first, let me make sure no additional feedback surveys came in. They have not. So you've got all the feedback surveys that I've gotten tonight. I'd like to now talk about the candidates. So much like we did in the first round, I'm going to call on each of you. Just give me, the highlights, the things that you liked about the candidate. If it's things that we covered last time, no need to repeat yourself unless you really feel necessary. So if you discovered something new that you liked or something that you were glad you heard tonight that you didn't hear last time, that's kind of the stuff that I want to hear about. And if you still have any wonders, if there's still some unanswered questions for you regarding a candidate, I would like to hear about those things as well. Just like last time, if you hear from somebody else, don't feel the need to repeat it unless you really want to. You can feel free to pass or just acknowledge that somebody else already stole my thunder. All right. So I tried to mix the order up a little bit this time, so we'll see how well I did. So I'm not going to start with Danielle. All right. So I'm starting with Teresa.
I knew you were going to say that.
You're welcome. So that,
I liked his 100-day plan. Of course, we all had already mentioned that we liked his 7 correlates of effective schools. I really didn't have too many concerns other than his plan seemed very, I guess my wonder would be, is he going to be able to implement his plan with everything that was on it?
Okay. All right. That's fair. Okay. Debbie?
Okay. I liked that. I liked interwoven through everything that was said was intentional and deliberate, and proactive. I really like that. When he talked about show people what we're doing well. That's very important that we show people what we're doing well. And I like that he added to that that a focus on early childhood programs, because that is how we do better, as we reach our students as early as possible. I liked that he spoke about changing the narrative. And again, it's a very intentional approach, and it's something that we have control over, changing the narrative and the culture and climate. Why are students leaving and going somewhere just to get more of the same? And he emphasized that we have control over that. And again, it comes back to being intentional about our message. I loved the emphasis on special ed. And that ensuring compliance on IEPs and 504s, and that there are no reasons that are acceptable for being out of compliance. I loved everything about special ed that he mentioned. And then the other thing for me that really stood out is all the decisions we make. He refers them back to our vision statement, because a lot of times when we have a lot of stuff to do, we could be pulling all over. But I like that with every intentional act, we're going through the filter of what is our vision statement? What are we accomplishing?
Okay, any wonders?
I just wonder, I know there's a lot of excitement, and Dr. Edmondson comes across very genuine and enthusiastic. I just wonder if he got here and realized, like all of the groups, if, that enthusiasm would continue. I think it would. I just, would wonder, could we burn him out, and what he does, when facing really tough challenges, like, will we be a deterrent?
Okay. All right. Denisa.
I know, great minds think alike. So I think he is comes across energetic, knowledgeable, experienced, and I just really thought the reference to the IEPs and the fact that he addressed just about everything that I had a question on in his 100-day plan, traumatic students, traumatic responses to COVID. Have down here. And I really love the idea of, just like Debbie just said, why are students leaving for more of the same, and understanding that we need to identify what that is in order to be able to address it. I don't have any wonders. I like the thoughts, just very innovative, the vision, the mission, and identifying the two, and how we have to continue to drive those things in order to reach everyone. And I love that presentation. And again, I believe it was very genuine, and is looking to do a very good job at her district.
Okay. Thank you, Denisa. Ursula.
Okay. Ditto to what they said. I really liked the 100-day plan, how he was able to pull up our district's data and compared it to one of the local charter schools that our students are leaving to go to see that you can have the same thing here. The closeout, I like the quote that he put at the end stating, where is it at? I'm sorry. Children are the priority, change is the reality, and collaboration is the strategy. We talk about it, we talk about collaborating, we talk about the change. Really looking at his 100-day plan, I can see that. He's sincere about the children. And like you say, you know, from a neighboring district, like we said before, he seemed to be very energetic and upbeat with his answers. I don't have any concerns. Just, it was very thorough.
Okay, thank you. Judy?
I was very, what I liked about Dr. Edmondson is pretty much what we had discussed at our previous process of the interview, but I just wanted to bring out a little bit more in terms of what I heard from him, and that was he welcomed change management in terms of what change the aging is and the processes and the steps in that, and he welcomed taking on those challenges where it was to reach out to the individuals who are uncertain with the changes and what needs to be changed with developing buy-in and input from those individuals who are a part of it. And I like the fact that he took our data and he very intentionally did in-depth research and looking at where we are to determine, you know, where we need help from at all school building levels. So that 100 plan piece of that was very good. I like that he took the time to do that and go over it briefly. I also liked his comment that he made when there was a question pertaining to something with the budget, I believe it was, when he said, well, it's not an act, it's a we when we determine the cuts, and we do it in a collaborative way. And he sat down and he actually mapped out initiative steps in terms of how that should be done as strategic. And so that means he put in some thought in doing that. He did come back to the table with the same enthusiasm, same vision, the same strategic plan. He talked more intensely about transparency and professional development all across the board, top up, bottom up. And he stressed that throughout his presentation. He talked about his visibility. And so his data presentation was a little more in depth. I was appreciating that, where he talked about the gaps, where he was deliberate in identifying what those areas and strengths are. He also made a comment that I really thought was great when he said, and I believe I heard it in the previous interview too, when he said that professional development doesn't fit all teachers at all levels, because a first year versus a veteran that's in teaching, their needs are different, and he recognized that and he brought that to the table. I don't have anything to say negative or that I'm concerned about at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Danielle?
So pretty much what everyone else said, but I'd like to add, it was the question about looking at a new approach and initiative and measuring success and implementation. I just liked his model of, you know, at least 2 to 3 years on measuring with the professional development piece for the first year, pushing fidelity, excuse me, ooh, Lord, fidelity. Okay, you know that W with the slash. Push with fidelity, YouTube world. Second year, and then year 3 results for the measurements of measuring. So I liked that he thought about how you would measure and how much time you would actually need to do that. I liked his 100-day plan. But I wonder if it's a bit ambitious. And then also, I still do wonder how hands-on he would actually be. He talked a lot about relationships and building teams and delegating, but I'm just wondering, you know, how hands-on is he actually going to be? So that's what I wonder about.
Okay, thank you. President Martell.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I thought Dr. Edmondson was very sharp, very prepared. I thought his presentation was very impressive. A couple things that caught my attention was the repeated, reiteration of fidelity. And I think that's something that we really need within our district and within our central office. And so that's important to me. And then just his, wanting to bring in businesses to, and the motto around businesses, taxpayers, residents, all centered around, the students. We need that here. So there were a lot of good points. I don't have any concerns at this point. I think he identified some of our weaknesses as well. The fact that it may have been overly ambitious, I don't think it was, it was concerning. I was glad that he had, even the comparison between our neighboring competition was, even reviewing the data that was, he's done his research, and I appreciate that. I've taken the time to review the pros and cons from our community as well, and I appreciate that. So just taking all that into consideration, I appreciate the process. I think he's pretty sharp, and I appreciate it.
Okay, so let's move on to our second candidate, Dorothy. So President Martell, what do you have to say about Dorothy?
Thank you, sir. I think she has a lot of great qualifications, assets. She's big on grants, curriculums. I think her experience with grants is well noted. She has blueprint experience. Similar concerns from a rural district. Is she going to move to Romulus or commute? And also, whether she's worked in a similarly situated district as ours. But I definitely think that she has a lot of assets, well qualified, and I see that she's got the COVID situation under control in Vassar. So I think that she, definitely brings some good things.
Okay, Danielle.
I liked the pieces that she had with the student engagement, and then aligning with evaluation tools for teachers. She talked a lot about having data discussions, and I do really appreciate her knowledge of the blueprint. I feel like she can definitely move that. I think, again, I just for me, a wonder. I mean, to be frankly honest, just the fit in the community really is what I wonder, how well she'll be received.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's pretty much it for me.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Judy?
Okay, she came to us in the first interview with the same enthusiasm, the same insight. The information she gave us more extensive participation in working with the blueprint and the systems and how it could possibly align with our district. And she continuously spoke on how she would be visible in the district and in the community. Particularly, what was a good thing that captured me was her communication and involvement with students. I think she demonstrated that even in her presentation at the end when she had her board and whatever, and she communicated, and it came across when she was delivering her responses to us. She definitely had that student engagement piece, grant writing, definitely, because she gave us examples and how successful it was and the steps forward. And then too, I definitely agree with Danielle, the evaluation tools for instructional staff. she talked about that. And my wonders are the same, and that is how she would fit into the community. And what I really would have liked to have seen is more extensive data-driven, specific needs information pertaining to our school, to Romulus Community School District in terms of enrollment and specific needs, curriculum specific, and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Ursula.
I piggyback off of them as well. I really wanted to. I liked what she said. She's very knowledgeable. It's like she can probably teach the blueprint the way she was describing it. But she seems very knowledgeable in that. She does have the experience. My concern is, will she fit the culture of Romulus? And why she talks so highly about Vassar? Why does she want to leave? That's my one concern. You know, you're about to leave there and they're going to have an opening. But more or less, how would she fit in our community? Would she be accepted? I guess that's the question. Other than that, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Denisa?
Okay. I found her to be refreshing, upbeat. I really liked her knowledge and the in-depth description of Blueprint. I also liked how she talked about the different levels of engaging people into Blueprint. I'm one of those people. We talk about Blueprint and being a fairly new board member. I'm not on the level as many of my colleagues. And so I like the idea, if this is something that we're going to continue to move forward, that maybe it needs to be at a point where I can be brought from the level that I'm at to the level that everyone is that has been engaging in the Blueprint. So I really liked how she talked about that. And only thing that concerned me, there were a couple of references that gave a little room to concern on her being able to engage in the community. A couple references that just gives a little room to be considering that. So that's all I have on that.
Okay. Thank you. Debbie?
Okay. I really liked how Superintendent Blackwell is intentional about seeking out the naysayers. I think that is important for a lot of reasons. And I like that she doesn't shy away from that based on this interview. I have reason to believe that she does seek them out. And also when people are collaborating, if it's something that's not possible, I appreciate that she communicates that instead of letting them go through and collaborate, then not use ideas. I loved when she said transparency and it's a dialogue. That is so important. And I appreciated that she said that, and that you cannot over communicate. That was good. I also liked when she talked about high expectations for students and teachers, the engagement strategies, and to get students engaged and also get staff excited. I love Blueprint, so I loved her knowledge of that. I appreciated her knowledge in that she sees how all the systems are interconnected. That was a lift of mine. And also how she talks about depersonalizing data. I think that's something that is beneficial. My concerns, my wonders are that the things that she brought, all of these positives that I lifted, my wonders are how she would get the buy-in and get the collaboration and the unity that's needed to make it successful here in Romulus, because every systems are good, but they only work if the people are working them. So that would be my concern, as well as the 10 to 15% fund balance. I would love that. But in theory, I'm wondering how much of a reality that is for us. And also, of course, the distance. There was a lot of stakeholder feedback about would she move closer? Would she be willing to relocate? And that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. And Teresa.
Okay. I did like the fact that she brought up about apprenticeships for CTE programs. That's something that I think would benefit our students greatly. Nothing like hands-on experience while you're trying to learn a new skill. I liked her. Of course, everybody knows I like Blueprint, so I love that she's very vested into Blueprint and knows all about it. And when somebody mentioned about her, she taught it. Well, she was a facilitator like Tim Kelly was, so she definitely knows teaching about Blueprint too. One of my wonders is the buy-in. I know our district isn't buying into the Blueprint. I think she would have a hard sell with this. I don't know if that's what she would base her superintendency on, but I do think it's a strong suit with her. And then the other piece is, and I think it's sad to say it, but I don't know how she would be accepted by the district as far as culturally. And that's my wonder.
Okay, thank you very much. So I would like to now bring up something for you and I'll take a look at. Something you've seen several times, and I just want to make sure that we're being mindful as we think about next steps of the criteria that you as a board accepted to go along with this posting. Talking about the district seeking superintendent who will work with the Board of Education to continue its implementation of cutting-edge initiatives while also supporting student growth, strengthening relationships with community stakeholders. Someone that works with the board, staff, and community to create a tangible plan for attaining the vision, creating the appropriate processes, promoting a culture of learning both in the classroom and the home. Successful experience with diverse urban communities, K-12 teaching experience, building level and or central office administrative experience, previous superintendent experience preferred, master's degree plus administration certification required, demonstrated responsiveness to students with learning differences, proven track record of raising student achievement, embodies the highest degree of moral, professional, and ethical behaviors, high level cultural competency, embraces diversity and equity of all kinds, exceedingly responsive, follows up and follows through, establishes and demonstrates the value of strong relationships with students, families, and community, strong communication skills with school board members, overarching love of kids, demonstrates exceptional public relations and communication skills, recognizes values and affirms teachers and staff members, able to develop and lead effective executive and administrative teams, experience in developing and managing budgets in an educational setting, fosters a culture of accessibility and responsiveness in communication systems, ability to develop creative solutions to complicated problems, employs consensus building as part of a comprehensive decision-making process, experience in building relationships with employee groups, families, and community stakeholders. So that's the criteria that you set. So knowing what you know, thinking about all the things we talked about tonight, thinking about all the things we talked about last week, taking into consideration the feedback that you got last week and got tonight, the presentations, the interviews, what questions do you still have? What is it that you as a board still need to talk amongst yourselves about? What is still lingering out there? Or are you ready to move forward with a motion?
So I want to ask the board, considering after interviewing these two well-qualified candidates, are we comfortable with moving and kind of just backing up what they said, or are we comfortable with moving forward with one of these two candidates?
Mr. President, this is Ms. Kennard.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm comfortable with moving forward.
Thank you. So let me probably rephrase. Is there anybody that's not comfortable?
So, Mr. President, Ms. Funderburg, so
Yes, ma'am.
I almost kind of feel like if we could take a little bit of what she has and some of what he has and put it together, we have the perfect candidate. Because I kind of feel like they have strengths and weaknesses, and you know, because okay, so our reality is, I know that we definitely need someone who is extremely hands-on in central office. One, especially because of some of the decisions that we've recently made with a lot of the financial cuts. So like the absence of curriculum director, trying to catch up with the special education piece. We're, still, to me, really kind of training our HR director. And so there are just a lot of different pieces where I feel like we need to have someone who is knowledgeable and willing to put in the work in those areas. And to me, it's just me, not just delegate them, because, because we've got so many gaps, it's kind of like, you've already got people who are stretched. So you kind of need somebody that's willing to come in and do some of the heavy lifting as well. But again, also too, as our community, demographically is changing, you also want to have someone who looks like our kids, and that's important. But I think in the long run, you do want the most qualified individual to occupy that space. And so it's like, for me, I kind of I love Dr. Edmondson's energy. I love he seems really very optimistic. He seems eager to really want to get in, but I'm really, I just have those wonders of, how, is he going to be so engaged in the relationship building piece that some of the other things fall by the wayside? And then on the flip side of that, with Superintendent Blackwell, she has some of the same energy, just to me exemplified a little bit differently. But again, will our community embrace her? And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. That's my space.
Thank you, Ms. Funderburg. And just, if I may, for a minute, there's no perfect candidate. There's one that's probably the best fit for our community. And I think that, there's pros and cons with each. My measuring stick is, we're kind of in a rebuilding stage, and we need a leader that's going to help us to rebuild. And that includes, of course, academically, as well as enrollment, at the same time, while keeping our kids safe. So that's just some of the things I'm looking at in making this decision. So at this point, Day, I guess if there's no notable objection to moving forward with one of these two candidates, then I guess then we will move forward with the next steps. Correct? Mr. Bennett? You're on mute, sir.
I lost my mouse pointer. I couldn't find it. Okay. So next steps, before we get to next steps, just to address, if you would entertain me, just to address your concerns, you're absolutely right. As much as I would love to, Dr. Frankenstein, a candidate for you, and take the bits and pieces and create that perfect superintendent. If I could do that, I'd be a rich man. But it is up to the boards of education to direct and influence their superintendent. And so you look for that best match, and then you get to work. You get to the work of board governance, and you get to the work of moving your district forward. So if you are indeed happy with moving either one of these two candidates forward, then it would be appropriate for someone to make a motion towards taking your next step. And so that motion would be something along the lines of agreeing to go into negotiations with whichever candidate you would like. And then, if that is successful in passing, then you would start that negotiation process with that candidate.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. With that being stated,
Mr. President, can I just ask Jay a question quick?
yes, ma'am.
As far as with the contract negotiation piece, both of these two candidates know what our pay range is, and they were agreeable to it, correct?
Yes, as far as I know. I mean, they haven't said anything to me otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Beard, Mr. Bennett. With that being stated, after second round of interviews and reviewing qualifications of both candidates who are both well qualified, it's my honor to make a motion to move forward with ensuing contract negotiations with Dr. Benjamin Edmondson for the next superintendent of Romulus Community Schools.
Support.
Moved by myself, Martell, supported by Ms. Wester. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll go right into roll call.
Funderburk,
No.
Piles, Piles,
Oh, boy.
Beard,
I'm conflicted here. And I think it's important that this should be a unanimous decision. I will say yes, and I'm basing that based on all of the community input that we got back, as well as what we've heard in the interviews and what our qualifications were.
thank you. Terrell,
Yes.
Kennard,
Yes.
Piles,
It appears that Debbie has logged out or gotten kicked out.
Wester is yes. Martell,
Yes. So we got everybody that voted besides Ms. Piles.
correct.
Okay. At this point, the motion does carry 5-1 with Ms. Piles not participating, of course. So I would like to, I'm excited. I think that, Dr. Edmondson will be a great fit for our community. And as I said, both candidates were well qualified. But I'm excited for our community, our district to move, turn a new corner and move forward with rebuilding.
So, President Martell, if I may.
Yes, please.
It is, there is an opportunity for you in a show of support to take another vote if you decide that that is something that you'd like to do. And that's completely up to you as to whether or not you want to give the board an opportunity to show your new superintendent a unanimous vote. That is up to you. And I know that you still have one board member that was here and is not here. So I will leave that up to you.
What do you? I think that's a great idea. Miss Piles just indicated that her battery went dead, and she will to hang on essentially. So, with that
Okay,
also stated,
if you'd like, while we're hanging on, as far as next steps of the contract, so you have a experienced superintendent that has been through this process before. I have a strong suspicion that he will have a clear idea of his expectations as far as the contract goes. So this should be a fairly straightforward process. I would anticipate that he has an idea of what he's looking for. You have an idea of what it is that you're looking for. And I'm talking not only salary, but also additional elements of the contract. Please work with your local council to make sure that the contract meets. So whether that's Troon or whoever you generally would use as your local council, make sure that they approve the contract as well before you make that formal offer to him. But I will leave it up to you as board president to make those negotiations. I will also share with you his number so that you can give him a call and let him know from yourself. And then I will take care of reaching out to Superintendent Blackwell and letting her know the board's decision as well.
thank you. Just one other thing before we begin, as far as legal counsel and reviewing of our contract, our superintendent, our proposed contract. Is there anybody opposed to utilizing Roan or Attorney Gardner is the individual who, or is the attorney that would be working to review and facilitate that? Is there any board member opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. So so with that said, we will utilize Roan. I see Ms. Piles is back.
Mr. President, this is Mrs. Beard. As far as with the lawyer, have we contacted Keller Toma to let them know that they're not representing us in matters anymore?
No, I did have a discussion with them today regarding the specific matter. I don't want to get too far off base because we're in the middle of this, but regarding that specific matter regarding the investigation, I did speak with her today and informed her that they would not be handling that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. President, I apologize. I didn't realize my battery went out and then, okay, yep, real life happened here and there's a court issue, but I'm back.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Was there a motion?
There was a motion and we did have a vote. And in the spirit of unity, I'm going to put another, I'm going to restate the motion and you know, we can revote. Hopefully, yes. So I want to make a motion to, again, it's my honor to make a motion to ensue contract negotiations with Dr. Benjamin Edmondson as the new superintendent of Romulus Community Schools.
Support.
Made a motion by myself, Martell, supported by Wester. Can we have a roll call, please?
Piles.
Yes.
Beard.
As I stated previously, yes, I'm posting my vote based on what our criteria was, what community input was.
Thank you. Terrell.
Yes.
Thunderbird.
I'm still no.
Kennard.
Yes.
Wester, yes. Martell.
Yes, motion passes. And again, I would like to welcome Dr. Edmondson to the district, and we look forward to working with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Romulus Board of Education. So as I said, I will forward on Ben's contact information to you, President Martell, so you'll have that, so you can give him a call here in a few minutes. I will reach out to Superintendent Blackwell. I will leave it to you to start working through your contract negotiations. I am not done with you by a long shot. I am here for you as long as you need me. So if you have any issues, please feel free to reach out. I will be reaching out to you in the next several months to put together a follow-up workshop. If you have nothing else for me tonight, then I want to thank you very much for your professionalism through this process. You've been a fantastic board to work with through this process, and I congratulate you on having a tentative agreement with a new superintendent.
Thank you, sir, and it was a pleasure working with you as well. Thank you. As for the board and the community or the rest of the audience, we are still in the middle of a meeting, as you know, so we're going to move forward into the next agenda item, moving towards adjournment, and that is communications from the public. And before we begin, I just again want to reiterate that, there's no perfect candidate. I think Dr. Edmondson will be a great fit for our community, and our goal is rebuilding. And so with that being stated, I want to open the floor to the community for interactions or communications. We're limited to 3 minutes, no personal attacks, and the floor is open. And I see we have a comment from Romula's parent. The tentative agreement is with Dr. Benjamin Edmondson. Is there any other communications from the public before we move into communications from the board members? Thank you. Okay, at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to the board. Floor is open.
Mr. President, this is Kennard.
Yes, ma'am. Floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to thank Jay Bennett for being our facilitator throughout this entire process. In some areas, it was a learning experience. In some areas, it was things brought back to this type of process. But it wasn't an easy decision for us to make. I want our public and all those who provided us with information throughout this entire process. I want you to know that we heard you. I heard you. I read every email that was sent before us and took everything in consideration in helping me to decide the decision of the vote that I made. I also feel that Dr. Edmondson would be a great fit for our community, for our children. He came to us with a lot of enthusiasm, and I'm looking forward to working with him as a board member. And also, I'd like to say to everyone, stay safe.
Thank you. The floor is open for any other commentary from additional board members.
Mr. President?
Yes.
First, I apologize for my battery dying and for going MIA. First, I want to start off tonight with thanking all of the stakeholders who joined us in this process from the beginning. Even before we started the search, we heard you that you wanted a search. You told us why you wanted a search. And so once we did that, I appreciate every stakeholder and stakeholder group who offered feedback, who did surveys, who joined us here in our meetings. And my vote tonight was definitely a reflection of that feedback, as well as, what I think is needed for this district and how our board works. But I can personally say that the feedback I received from stakeholders was paramount in my decision tonight and how I cast my vote. I would encourage and charge stakeholders to continue coming. This was not a finish line, it's a starting point. And so we need all of our community, all of our district, all of our community invested in this decision we just made. And together, we will be a better district. It's not in one person, it's in the unity among the individuals who are all part of the whole. And so I would really encourage everybody, whether you agree with the decision the board made tonight, or whether you disagree, whether you're happy or whether you're really angry, this was not a finish line. It's a starting point. So please join us as we go forward, and look forward to us with the well-being of our community. That was my lift, and that as a board member is something that I really want to hold Dr. Edmondson to his word on, and I look forward to good things happening, and please stay involved with us.
Thank you, Ms. Piles. Any additional? Floor is open.
Mr. President, it's Ms. Wester.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to, again, piggyback off my colleagues and thank Jay for the awesome job he did facilitating. Thank our stakeholders for coming out to all these meetings and being a part, giving us the feedback and what they were looking for moving our district forward. Looking to make, I'm ready for us to go to the next level, and making sure that our students get what they deserve. Our community is given what they deserve. Transparency in this complete process. Just thank everybody. Stay safe and have a good evening.
Mr.
Thank you so
President.
much. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Terrell.
Just really wanted to piggyback off of everything. I love the community engagement and have considered strongly the many emails and text messages that I've received through the entire process. Everybody, we want the best for our district, as far as our community, our teachers, our parents, everyone. And so I just really appreciate the fact that we've had many people participate and actually come to the virtual meetings. And I hope that we can move forward and that everyone will stay engaged, because it does take a community. It takes each one of us and our input. And in addition to that, I just hope everyone continues to stay safe.
Thank you so much. Is there any additional from the board at this time? Okay.
I'm sorry,
okay.
Mr. Martell, this is Mrs. Beard again. I just would like to tell Jay, thank you for assisting us in the process and for being open and ready to take our phone calls when we might be having a panic attack about what we're looking at, and putting us back in the right frame of mind to look at the information. I also would like community members to please stay involved. I based my vote on community input. I think it's very important that our community and stakeholders that work and live in our district, people that work and live in our district, are providing input to us. And I'm hoping to work with Dr. Edmondson and working with the board as a whole, and working with him. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional from the board before we close? Okay, at this point in time, before we close, just briefly, I want to thank the community for participating. It's about collaboration and bringing all the stakeholders to the table. It's about transparency, fidelity. I think that, that what we lacked before was process, and I think that's what took place today. And I'm thankful that I think we got a great candidate, and I'm looking forward to rebuilding. You know, as Ms. Powell said, this is the starting line. So I'm excited, and I look forward to everybody continuing to come to the table. You know, based on what we've heard in these interviews, I got a feeling we're going to see a lot of change, and you know, we're going to make Romulus Community Schools something that people are going to want to come back to. So, with that being stated, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn at this point.
Support.
What about Ms. Pounds? Roll call, please.
Wester supported.
Wester.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry, Ms. Supported by Wester. Roll call, please.
I know we sound alike. Kyle.
Yes.
Thunderbird.
Yes.
Beard.
Yes.
Terrell.
Yes.
Kennard.
Yes.
Wester, yes. Martell.
Yes. Meeting adjourned.
8:51.
Thank you, guys. See you later. Be safe. When are we back? What day are we back? Is it
Friday.
Friday? What time?
4:00.
4.
Friday, 4 o'clock. Okay. Thank you. See everybody later. Stay safe. God bless.